Today's episode of This Is Only a Test is brought to you by Autodesk Sketchbook. Do you like to draw, doodle, or capture your ideas visually, but never have had a pencil and paper with you when inspiration strikes? Well, Sketchbook is the app you've been looking for. You can capture a quick sketch or build up high-quality render right from your phone, tablet, or computer. Sketchbook is easy to use, free to download, and the desktop version comes with a 15-day free trial. No credit card required. That's awesome. Head over to sketchbook.com/tested to download for iOS, Android, Windows, or Mac. And if you like it, remember to use the promo code TESTED, like the name of the show, when you check out for 25% off an annual membership. That's sketchbook.com/tested to get started right now. Hey, let's start the show.
It's October 1st, 2015. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Right.
Look at that fucking squirrel on my bird feeder.
And then suddenly, the Enterprise D's bridge.
I'm Will Smith. I'm going to go ahead and warn you, I'm going to play the dubstep theme every week from now on until the end of my hosting duties at the end of October.
End of October?
End of October.
That's it.
All right.
Norm is counting the days. Now all you guys are counting the days too. Norm Chance here. How you doing, Norm?
You know, the Bridge of Enterprise D intro could now apply both to Star Trek The Experience, which no longer exists, and where that audio clip was from, description of, or the virtual reality video of inside the Enterprise D.
Why not?
For which we must address the three shell phenomenon.
Jeremy Williams is here.
Hello.
Three seashells.
I'd never seen Demolition Man.
It's apparently, it was, I forgot that it was.
Have you seen Demolition Man,
I've seen
Norm?
Demolition Man.
I only watched it after I bought the pinball machine.
Is that the movie with Sandra Bullock and Wesley Snipes?
Yeah.
Yes, he's the
Where
villain.
every restaurant is Taco Bell and every store is Walmart?
That's right.
That's it.
That's all I know about Demolition Man.
And the future is very, the cops don't know what to do. There's no real crime. So when Wesley Snipes gets unfrozen in the future, starts a crime spree, and they got to unfreeze the person who captured him.
I don't remember
Frosted Tips Bruce Willis.
anything about
No,
the seashell.
Oh, it's Stallone?
Stallone.
Isn't that what? Yeah.
The seashell. So I think he goes into a bathroom and he sees three seashells and doesn't know which one to press, and that's the inside joke.
It's good that we did enough research to know the reference rather than just where the reference is from. But a lot of people were upset about it. I think that was a still untitled thing, though, wasn't it?
It was
it this?
last week.
Oh, okay.
2 weeks ago.
I
on
saw
this
comments
podcast.
about it. I didn't know where they were coming from. I didn't remember that at all.
When we're talking about the VR Enterprise D.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, when we talk here for 2 hours, God only knows what we
That's
said in
right.
the first 15 minutes. It's all gone by the time we get halfway through the show. It's been a really big week, guys.
Heck yeah.
Norm, you and I went to Oculus Connect with Joey last week. Google had a huge event yesterday where they announced a ton of new hardware. New iPhones are out. They sold 13 million of them. You went to a Model X launch event last night. A badass laser cutter released last week. The TiVo is back with a new piece of hardware.
All right.
Okay, I don't know if we get exposure for that one. But
There was Maker Faire, New York.
Oh
over the
God, New
weekend.
York Maker Faire was last weekend. I'm so glad we didn't go to New York Maker Faire this year. Our heads would have literally exploded. You're on your way to New York soon again, right?
I am on my way to New York by way of Seattle.
Oh, Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Coincidentally, at the same date, Microsoft is having some type of press event.
what an amazing coincidence. Should we talk about the Google event first? I think this is the big one this week. I mean, Oculus Connect could be the big one, but I think we need to save that for the VR minute.
Let's just get into it.
Yeah. Google announced 2 new phones yesterday. I think this is the big deal, the Nexus 6P and the Nexus 5X. The 5X is a phone for everyone. The 6P is now their highest-end Android phone from Google. I think the 6P is made by Huawei.
Hawaii? Yes.
And the 5X is LG. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct, but not a rebadge of the LG G4.
It's a new design, right?
It is a not only new design, 1080p screen, still uses, I believe, that 6-core processor of the G4. Does not have the awesome large sensor camera as the LG G4, which was one of the biggest selling points of that phone.
It's one of your favorite Android phones as a result, right?
So it's actually, but it is a really cheap phone off contract.
How much is really cheap?
$379.
It's not that cheap.
Well,
In the land of 1+1.
it's in the land of $200 not Lenovo, Asus phones, Zen phones, and the OnePlus 1, which now actually they raised the price this year. The OnePlus 2 was a little more expensive. But interesting that they did release 2 of Nexus phones. I don't think they. So if you look at the Nexus line, they never stood by the idea that Nexus phones were supposed to be cheap. Nexus were supposed to be the phones with these awesome new features that showcased the newest version of Android OS this year, Marshmellow, which has, for example, support for USB-C, has support for direct fingerprint sensing, and prices for the Nexus phones. You look at the Nexus 4 was low price, but had a weak processor and bad internet connection. Nexus 5 was great, probably the pinnacle of Nexus 5. Despite the quote unquote cheap build quality, the LG Nexus 5 I thought was one of my favorite phones. 1080, one of the first 1080p phones on the Android market, really cheap. I thought it was sturdy, reliable. And
they were ahead with hardware.
Yep,
right. That was the difference.
And the Nexus 6, which was made by Motorola, was basically like the anomaly, very difficult to buy. Like Nexus 5 eventually became really easy for everyone to buy. Nexus 6 was expensive and no one could buy it.
What do you mean? Hard to find?
Hard to find.
Like
it was
you
sold
couldn't
out
just go
for
to the Play
months.
Store? Oh, okay.
Months.
Huh.
And so now the Nexus, and it was a massive phone. This one, now that you have the 6P, and which is I believe $500, and the 5X $380. A little more reasonably priced, still pretty high end phone. 6P, super high end. You have your 8-core Snapdragon, 3 gigs of RAM.
Same resolution as the 6?
No, same resolution as the 6 in terms of 2560 by 1440.
Right.
AMOLED. And then they're really touting the camera sensor, a massive camera sensor, bigger than what's in the iPhone 6s, bigger than what's in the LG G4. And their comparison photos, according to them, show that it's much better for your low light. No optical image stabilization. They compensate for that by saying you don't need it because you just have a bigger sensor, so you can have faster shutter speeds. So you have faster shutter speeds. You don't need optical image stabilization. You can use both.
Right.
You could always use both.
Doesn't help you with video.
No, it doesn't help you with. You can crop. I guess software can help you somewhat with video. You have laser autofocus, which has been around for a while. Phones go pre-order now. I'm curious. I'm curious what people out there, because right now among Android enthusiasts, earlier in the year you had the LG G4 and you had the Samsung GS6 and those phones. They're kind of three of the pure phones. You have the Nexus 6P, Nexus 5X, and the Motorola X 2015 Pure Edition, which is also just $400. A great phone from all accounts. I don't have any of those 3 yet. I'm really curious of those 3 which people are interested in. I'm leaning toward the Moto X Pure Edition and not the Nexus phone.
I mean, the Moto X has been reviewing better every year, right? And it seems like they fixed the camera problems that they had last year. So,
and Lenovo owns them now. It's still the core Motorola team. It's an interesting, it's interesting product. It still has all the design features that the previous Moto X's have had, and we'll see how fast it gets Marshmellow, which is also rolling out next week to existing Nexus devices, except the 4, 10, and 7.
So does that mean Marshmellow will not be coming to those devices because they're too old?
They're too old.
Okay.
You are an expert.
I'm
amazed at how much knowledge you have to digest these days when it comes to cell phones, but you just have it.
That was like
right
5
there.
minutes of the press conference yesterday.
And that was only a small fraction of it. Well, Jeremy, now that I've recounted that knowledge, it goes into long-term memory. And then maybe it'll turn blue or purple or green or yellow.
You think that this is a blue?
Maybe it'll be bing
Maybe it could be a red.
It could just be bing bonged.
Is this? I mean, you're an adult though, so you should have combined memories.
Yes.
So it could be a yellow and a blue because now that you're an iOS guy,
well,
again,
you're back on the needle.
Driven more by emotion than by intellect.
Yes, because if there's one thing we would say about Norman Chan, it's that he is driven by emotion, not intellect. Chromecast. They had announced new Chromecast in colors, which I think is lovely for something that I jam into a plug behind my TV and am literally never going to see again after I plug it in that first time. But they made some substantial changes to it. It's 802.11 AC and has a 5 gigahertz radio now, which is actually a huge change, especially if you're doing things that are maybe unwise, like streaming 4K video to a stick or trying to stream 4K video to a stick. Or
it supports 4K video?
No, it doesn't, but at some point in the future it will.
Also, it's not a stick.
It's a dongle.
It's a bulb. It looks like.
Is it round?
It's round.
It's round, but is it spherical?
No. It looks like your UE Boom, your new UE Boom Mini.
Oh, like the roll. It's nowhere near that big.
Nowhere near that big.
It's like the size of a 50-cent piece.
It still looks like a puck.
It does look puckish. Does it still have a USB port?
Still needs power.
Yeah. It uses 5 gigahertz radio and 802.11 AC, which is great if you're streaming like less compressed Blu-ray rips across something like Plex inside your house.
Isn't that going to be a problem with adjacent HDMI?
Yeah. Usually they include an extender cable.
An extender.
Yeah. I don't know if this one will have an extender cable. Still $35, which is great. And if you ordered yesterday, it's shipping today. It has already shipped.
I'm ordering it right now. It's shipping by October 2.
Oh, no. I ordered one yesterday, and it shipped this morning.
That's awesome.
So we'll get one in to test. I think more interesting because there's obviously the antenna design and quality, and that can go against your Fire TV sticks and your Roku sticks, but the new Chromecast software. So not only is there more functionality in Chromecast, they incorporate things like Showtime playback, but also on the app side, the things you can mirror over to Chromecast. You don't actually have to do mirroring. There's a lot of just beaming things over. Better Google Photos integration, so you can like view slideshow, view your photos on the app, but just send the one you want.
Are those mitigate? Does it still run through cloud for that, or can you beam it directly from the app now?
I think it's beamed from the app from your phone. And then some interface changes, and they announced an audio version. Still $35.
Did you talk about Showtime and NHL?
Yeah.
And Spotify.
And Spotify. So
Spotify is a big deal.
Yeah.
The What's On thing I was really curious about because this is kind of new. Basically they're saying if you've watched certain channels before, you can now see stuff that you might be interested in from those channels. It seems like that's mostly YouTube right now. Does that seem right? Right. It was a little unclear.
Yeah, so they have services can feed information into Chromecast, so it becomes more of a menued player experience,
like a destination,
as opposed to just the single piece of content. But they also have pre-caching on things like Netflix now.
Oh, that's weird.
So they made a big thing. Google's all about what if we have infinite bandwidth and infinite processing power. So they want to cut down the time from pressing play to load. So they will pre-cache episodes. If you're watching an episode on Netflix and then it's before it starts the next episode, it will do a lot of pre-caching and it'll play back, which other companies have done pre-caching for, Amazon notably. And then there's audio, which has that Spotify integration. And this is another puck that you can plug into your speakers, and then you can send songs from Play Music and Spotify over to it. So other people can as well.
Oh, wait. So this is a mini port? How do you connect it?
I believe it is a 3.5 millimeter.
It's 3.5 millimeter audio out. The thing that was weird to me about this is that the beautiful, smart thing about the Chromecast is that it uses the HDMI CEC stuff. So when you connect to your Chromecast, if your TV is off and your amplifier is off, it will turn both of them on for you, right? It's so literally you can magically send a video on your phone from the YouTube app to the TV and everything turns on.
Is that HDMI ARC?
It's the CEC ARC is one of the brand names, I think, depending on which type receiver or TV you have.
I don't know what the appeal of this audio one is.
That's the thing is it's not going to be able to turn the stuff on automatically. So that means you're going to have to leave it into an always turned on speaker. Presumably this is for like iPhone docks and stuff like that.
It's for things that don't already have. Oh, you know what? You're right. It's for things if you live in a household that have both iOS and Android devices, and you want better than Bluetooth connection because you want to do an AirPlay. You buy an AirPlay device and it maybe has Bluetooth, but it most likely has just aux in. Some actually don't even have Bluetooth. Then now you can do Google to it.
Yeah, or presumably if you have a Sonos, they all have line level in, so you can plug that in and then pipe directly to that. This is a weird product. I don't exactly understand who this is for. If you guys have thoughts about what you would use it for, we'd love to hear it in the comments.
Would it make more sense as an all-in-one speaker?
No.
The world doesn't need more all-in-one speakers.
Yeah.
But like I would totally plug this in as an HDMI device that I can plug into my amplifier, so it'll turn on the amplifier when I need to listen to music. I mean, theoretically, the video Chromecast should do that as well.
So it'll do analog, also do RCA and optical.
Okay.
Analog meaning 3.5 millimeter in this case.
But 3.5 millimeter and RCA are electrically the same signals.
Yep.
The question is, like, it's not going to turn on an amp, so you need to plug it into speakers that are always on.
Yep,
that's right.
Let's see. They talked about a new Pixel. This is their Surface RT and iPad Pro competitor. I'm
Surface 3, like the one I'm using.
Is it x86 or is it ARM?
Well, it's in the Pixel family, which is really weird because I think technically this is I would put this in like the Nexus tablet device. Instead of releasing, like previously they had the Nexus 7, Nexus 10, Android devices made with other companies, rebranded. This one is in the Pixel family because they self-designed it. So
but it's Chrome OS as well, not Android, right?
it's Android.
It's Android?
It's Android.
Oh, I'm so confused.
Yep. So that's the confusing part.
So Pixel was a Chrome OS, that expensive Chrome OS laptop, the $1,000 Chromebook.
Yep. And I think they're calling Pixel now the devices that they design in-house.
Like keyboard and mouse devices,
Everything.
basically.
No, everything. Like they do the old industrial design.
So then conceivably there could be a Pixel phone next year that uses Android that was designed by Google.
That's right, as opposed to a Nexus phone.
As opposed to a Nexus phone. Weird.
Yeah, so it's a convertible Android tablet using NVIDIA's X1 processor, their mobile Maxwell SoC. And then has a keyboard, a weird like slidey magnetic keyboard that also charges. It's 10.2 inches.
It's a clip-on keyboard, right? Essentially.
It's not, I don't know if it's clip-on. There's definitely a magnetic connection, but it does like this slide back and then angles out with magnets. The fact that it runs Android makes this, in my eyes, not really a great Surface 3 competitor, or I think a lot of on the PC side, a lot of people are making now either convertibles or tablets that run Atom and run Windows 10 with Atom and can be great with that. So this running Android, I think, is a limiting factor, and I actually would have preferred that this run Chrome OS.
I mean, I don't know. I'm interested to see what this looks like in person.
It's also expensive.
It's what? How much is it?
$500 for 32 gigs, and the keyboard's $150.
That's only expensive when you compare it to Android tablets and not say an iPad Pro, which is about $1,000 well equipped, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm. It's interesting to me that this doesn't seem like a device that kind of needs to exist, and the feedback from the hands-on was pretty negative. Even like Android Police and ours were like, this is pretty clunky. So
what Google needs to do is really demonstrate that Android can be used like a desktop.
Well, we've seen
like a laptop.
We've seen x86 versions of Android that Intel has put into laptop form factors, right?
Well, I think less about the architecture and more about the UI and the applications, like dedicated full screen applications. I guess they work for the iPad side, but on the Android side, I don't know a lot of people who plug keyboards onto the Android tablets and use it as their office machine.
I think that's the thing that happens if you're in like a Salesforce type situation where your primary use case, like this is an enterprise device, right? It's a thing that exists so that people can use one device as their main computer interface with a piece of cloud software like Salesforce and not have to basically do anything else with it. I mean, this isn't going to replace your computer at home. It looks like it pops off from the Ars Technica pictures. I can't totally tell though.
No, it definitely detaches. The keyboard's optional.
Oh, okay.
It's $150 for the keyboard, $500 just for the tablet.
Yeah, that's bananas. It looks a lot like an iPad 1, the very first iPad, just in terms of industrial design. Let's see, a couple of other things. They announced that they're doing family purchasing plans for media, so that if your parents buy Smashing Pumpkins albums, then the kids can listen to them too. I think that applies to apps as well. This is all good and was needed on the platform. And they announced, as you said earlier, that Marshmellow is coming out next week. Did they give a list of devices that's going to be available on?
Nexus devices first, minus 4, 7, 10. 4 and 7 basically the same hardware.
And then presumably we'll see the naked versions of the old flagship phones, and then it'll roll out to everybody else over the next 6 months or a year. Okay. Do you think it's time for the VR Minute?
My body's ready.
Norman Chan, I drove down 5, as I like to think of it, Norman Chan style, to go to Oculus Connect last week.
Where did you have lunch? I guess you had lunch before. Where did you stop? Because you had to get gas at least once.
I stopped at Harris Ranch.
Good place to stop.
Wait, no. I stopped at Grapevine on the way down. I stopped at Harris Ranch on the way back.
Tejon Outlets.
Yeah, I went to Subway at the Tejon Outlets because I got there at like 6 o'clock.
When you drive down to the Tejon Outlets, this is the big shopping gas complex before you hit the mountains, the Grapevine. You got to go left or right.
I went right.
So you went to Panda Express side.
I went to Panda Express, In-N-Out. All that stuff was over there. But I ended up going to Subway because they had the best looking convenience store. And what I really wanted was a bunch of terrible junk food, because that stretch from Grapevine to downtown LA is kind of the long stretch for me. Like, I'm fine with the 5 stretch, which is flat and boring and perfectly straight.
Right.
But you have to really kind of pay attention coming down into Los Angeles.
And you think that mountain is smaller than you always think it's smaller, a shorter ride.
Yeah, it doesn't look because of the flatness of the ground coming up to it and then the size of the mountain, it looks small.
But it's big.
It's big.
It's mountainous.
Yeah. You know what I really want to know is when you come out 5 on the right, just as you're kind of leaving the LA Valley, there's like a big pipeline and then this like sluiceway on the right side of the road. I want to know what that is. It looks like something from GTA 5. Like it was represented in GTA 5. And it looks like they have like a reservoir or water storage or something there, and they run it down during the day and pump it up at night or something.
You know what I really want to know?
For. What do you want to know, Jeremy Williams?
How was Oculus Connect?
It was really good. It was interesting, actually.
How was it as a developer?
So it's perfect size if you're a developer.
Cool.
Because it's about 1,500 people, which means that there's a lot of really, really big brains there. But with 1,500 people, it means that if you actually want to seek someone in particular out, you can probably find them and get a couple of minutes to chat with them. Mm-hmm. So it was a very useful event for a fledgling and VR developer.
Was it sold out?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yeah, sold out. Last year was the first one, and both last year and this year held at the Lowe's Theater in Hollywood. Like, if you aren't from California and what you think of Hollywood is the Hollywood sign, the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and maybe where the Oscars are
Hollywood
held,
Walk of Fame.
and Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was right there.
Did you know that Will Smith doesn't have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame?
I did not know that.
I went looking for one on Friday night to take my picture with it because I thought that would be really funny as a profile picture.
Yeah.
He doesn't have one.
Does he have an Oscar?
I don't know.
Sad.
But he has concrete hands in front of Grumman's.
Do they change out the concrete hands?
I think they must.
I saw some empty spots.
Yeah.
We have derailed again.
Okay,
people?
well, anyway, the context of it is a big production, and last year was the first, when they held it the first time, it was actually kind of small. They did the presentation, the keynotes from the small Dolby Ballroom area, and it was like 2.5 days.
That's where they did them this time, isn't it? Oh, this is the theater.
2.5 days of just sessions. It's not like a GDC. So if you've been to Game Developers Conference, which is like a week-long, nonstop panel after panel, different tracks, here maybe like 2 or 3 tracks at most, like only a handful of things that are, if you're not a developer, you may be really interested in. And then like there are some coding demos and some lessons learned, because VR is still nascent. Yeah. From last year to this year, massively expanded. More people, they did all the keynotes in the Dolby Theater, which formerly known as the Kodak Theater, where they filmed the Oscars. So our butts were in A-lister seats.
Okay.
Well, I was in the back, so I was in like a C-lister seat probably. But
yeah.
How did you get your seats? Was there a big queue out front and they opened the doors?
They put everyone in. They put everyone into the foyer for a little breakfast before, and then they opened the doors and everyone just ran in and grabbed seats.
Okay. There's like a multi-tiered lobby.
Yeah, it is,
and it's where people hang out, I assume, after during the ceremony when they want to go out and have a cocktail or something.
Yes.
That theater's a lot smaller than I thought.
Yeah, it is smaller than, it reminded me actually of the Penn and Teller Theater.
It looks like a pretty good sized Vegas theater.
Yeah. But they somehow make it look really massive for the Oscars.
Wide lens.
Anyway, derailing again. 3 days of panels, discussions, frank talks from John Carmack, Michael Abrash, and those guys just walking around, Tim Sweeney just walking around, hanging out. Lots of developers, a lot of people making games, but also people there who are just interested in VR, maybe don't work for a company yet, but want to explore videography, maybe are an artist and looking to find developers to work with. A lot of people like that there.
I talked to a lot of people who worked at like big software companies that came on their own dime to kind of just check it out and see what was going on because they're into VR, which I thought was not at all what I was expecting. It was very cool.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of stuff they showed. A bunch of really cool demos and some new products.
Should we run through the keynote stuff, you think? Or
yeah.
I mean, I assume that most people probably didn't watch those keynotes.
Right. So there was no big, here's a new prototype demo. So we already got, earlier in the year with the event in San Francisco, the reveal of the Half Moon Bay touch controllers and also the CV1 design. So in terms of hardware, it wasn't going to be, we have some massive new hardware announcement or even pre-orders to announce. We talked last week about, speculating what could have been announced, and it was pretty much as expected on the hardware. Samsung's a new Gear VR, which this year will be compatible with both the Galaxy S6 phones and the Note phones.
Including the Edge phones.
It's like 5 different phones, right?
Yes, and the way they'll do that is just different brackets on the inside. Of course, the pixel density will be different for the phones, and the field of view is slightly different for the phones.
It's interesting that they can do that with the same optics, though, because don't the screens have different sizes?
They do, and I bet the software. In the middle, it just cuts right in the middle for all of them. So I think what you get is you just lose the field of view on the outside.
What do you think is the phone? Do you think it's the Note 5 is the phone to get?
I think it's GS6.
You think it's GS6 because of the higher pixel density?
Higher pixel density.
Okay.
Note 5 may have a little better, because it's bigger, maybe it may overheat a little less. The other thing they did was reduce the size of the headset, the Gear VR headset itself. They say it's 22% lighter. Doesn't mean that the whole thing's 22% lighter because you have to put the phone in. The phone doesn't weigh any less.
Right.
So if you factor in the phone, probably only like 5 to 10% lighter because the phone's heavier than the headset, or maybe just about the same.
No head strap, no top
strap, so it's confidence in just the side strap. And they redesigned the touchpad, so it now has indented divots for the four-way directional pad.
No new functionality, it's just
no new functionality.
What you feel.
Did they give a date on that?
They said in time for Thanksgiving. Okay. And price is now $100, which I think is good.
That is a good thing.
That's huge.
The first one was $250, the second one was $200.
Yeah.
Now $100. I think some people are really hoping for $50 for just easy adoption.
Really?
But that might have been too optimistic.
Is the Note 5 actually out?
Note 5 is out.
So that means that if you want to get a Gear VR headset, but you have a Note 5, there's no way to do it right now, basically.
Correct. You have to wait for.
You have to wait for November.
Yeah, I don't think last year. I'm not sure if last year's works for. I don't have a Note 5 to test that.
So if you want to get a Gear VR, say you're like an iOS guy like me, and you want to get a Gear VR, what's the cheapest all-in for a Gear VR once this new version comes out?
It's an on-contract Galaxy S6 and then the headset, the $99 headset.
Yeah, and that is it.
That'll be $200, $300.
Off contract though. I don't want a contract. I don't even want cell coverage.
It's going to be $700.
Okay.
$700 all in for a GS, and they gave everyone there the GS6 one. Yeah. So, Jeremy, because we already have the GS6 headset, if you wanted just to buy the phone, I can give you the headset.
Unfortunately, the headset's not the big cost here.
It is the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you were hoping, at least from our discussions, that they would release some type of integrated hardware where it was a headset Samsung made, then it maybe doesn't have the phone functionality, and they can put some electronics in the back to redistribute the weight, and you just have the display in the front and the processor in the back, and maybe that would be better for cooling and battery as well. I don't doubt that that's not happening.
Yep.
I think they're going to wait till Oculus figures out positional tracking on a wireless device.
That after spending a lot of time, I spent a couple hours looking at Gear VR demos while we were there because they had a whole lounge setup where you could just check out a Gear VR, sit down, and basically run through 20 or 30 things that are either available or coming soon, including stuff like Netflix and that. The experience, they need positional tracking for that.
I think that's a sentiment that you have coming from DK2 and newer Vive experiences, but people coming from Cardboard, they don't know about positional tracking, and it's just like when we had the DK1, no one cared about it then either.
Here's the thing.
It's an evolution. Once you experience it, you need it.
No, it's not that. For me, it's about nausea. Like if you're prone to nausea, the lack of positional tracking and the drift that you get with the accelerometer and gyroscope is going to cause people problems.
But that wasn't a problem for you playing TF2 with the DK1.
Yeah, I didn't feel great. I mean, I didn't feel sick.
Well, the experiences are designed differently. So if you're talking about most games, and I think one of the reasons they didn't have announced positional tracking or didn't spend the effort, which John Carmack frankly said, that no one person at Oculus Research or in the hardware team was devoted to figuring out computer vision for the built-in camera phones. It's a tough problem to figure out for power consumption reasons and latency reasons, because developers have been making Gear VR games that don't need it. And why fragment that market when they can launch in the late 2015, early 2016 timeframe with mobile games that are just rotational tracking.
So the rumor I heard is that has changed, and now there are people at Facebook or at Oculus working on positional tracking.
Absolutely do not doubt that.
Yes.
And when you roadmap next year, maybe next year's product, after you have a year of people already adopting, getting used to VR, and as content partners, when you think of like the length of experiences, a lot of the games right now are nice 10 to 15 minute, 5 to 15 minute game experiences where rotational tracking is totally fine, or the longer ones like watching a Netflix movie, you're not expected to do a lot of movement, a lean back experience where rotational is also fine.
And I think the lean back experience is totally fine. I think it's the stuff like I played the game, I can't remember what it's called, but the thing by the people that made Monument Valley, and you can play that one of two ways, right? So you can either use your head to kind of steer and then tap the touchpad to move, traverse the environment to specific spots.
But you do move through space.
You do move through space, but it's teleports, and they have a little bit of a whoosh on it. It seems like, so you can kind of there's a slight feeling of movement, but it wasn't so much that it put me off. I mean, I don't really get motion sick. Norm played it too, so he'll know more. However, you can also play that with the gamepad, and when I played that with the gamepad, immediately made me feel nauseous.
Yeah.
Which is unusual for me. Like previously, playing Temple Run in the back of Norm's car was the way I could get nauseous, right? Okay.
So there's nothing to say other for the Gear VR side other than that's what we can expect for at least the next couple months. Their Gear VR launch. This is the one that they said you should wait for. Not because they were going to add new hardware features, but because there'll be more phone compatibility and it'll be cheaper. If you want to experience, mobile VR, the best of mobile VR, I think we can unequivocally say, untethered VR, consumer, then this Gear VR is the one to get.
I think, it's the first headset that's going to be out there, so it should be a bellwether. Like, I think if you already have a Galaxy S6 or buying a Note 5, spending $99 for this, if you like games and VR, is a no-brainer.
If they're listening to this podcast, I'm sure they've already pre-ordered.
I mean, maybe. If you don't already have a Galaxy S6 or Note 5, I would kind of think about, I wouldn't go buy the phone just to get this unless you're thinking you're going to make games or something.
Right.
Yeah, so I think we can kind of segment, and they did too when they talk about their how they think about virtual reality in terms of the hardware. You have mobile, you have Rift, and then you have touch. Was that how they did it?
I feel so. That's the order in which they presented things.
So mobile side, are we all go on the mobile side? I guess we should talk about Netflix. Netflix being
Netflix and Twitch and shared avatar experiences.
Right. So Netflix, Hulu, Vimeo. And very notably absent, no YouTube,
no HBO Go,
and no HBO Go. When I think it was Carmack who came up to talk about this now, when people use Oculus Cinema, which was I still believe a killer app for that type of mobile VR experience. The content you could view was really limited. You had to upload and convert your phones and make sure your phone supported the codec. Now they have his quote, a bottomless well of content. When people think of bottomless wells of content on the internet, they think of YouTube, and it was very, very notable that YouTube was not a partner there.
It's also worth mentioning that they have a movie store now for the Gear VR headset. Yep. So you'll be able to buy movies. Presumably you'll be able to play them on your PC as well, but that remains to be seen, where you can buy theatrical films and watch them in 2D or 3D.
Lionsgate, 20th Century Fox.
At first. I mean, I think if they show sales, and that stuff will expand really quickly.
Yep.
It's just a matter of them establishing partnerships, and they're small enough that they can take their time with it.
So in terms of the new bottomless wells, for user uploaded stuff, it's Vimeo, and it's a curated version of Vimeo. That's a mixture of the staff picks and stuff that Oculus pulls out.
So it's a subset, not the full list.
Yep.
Can you log into your own account and watch your own videos?
You cannot search. At least from the interface I saw, it was just built into Cinema, another tab in Cinema.
It was kind of reminiscent of the Xbox One Twitch app before they added full integration, when you could just get a subset of channels and say, here's Xbox's favorite 20 Twitch channels or whatever.
And then they talked about, for Netflix and Hulu, those are great examples of media experiences where it's not actually built into Oculus Cinema, which they're calling now Oculus Video. It is their third-party developed apps. Now, Netflix, there was a big partnership.
Were they third-party developed, or were they first-party developed with a third-party access? Because it seemed like they all shared the same visual style on the environments.
So from the guy I talked to who worked at Hulu, they had been working on it in their own offices.
Oh, okay.
And with their own teams.
Okay.
I think Carmack did the Netflix app.
Carmack did the compatibility, but not like the not the interface. He did the way in the 2-day jam session, coding session, they found a way to get the APIs working and make it compatible so you can watch it in a small display.
Yeah.
But Netflix, I think, designed the environment.
And I'm sure that Oculus is putting developer relations folks in Netflix's office, in Hulu's office, to help them work out the VR side of it, because that stuff's tricky.
Yeah.
Trust me.
So could you watch a movie? Could you imagine watching a whole Netflix movie in the Netflix cinema?
I did.
You did? What movie did you watch?
While you're there?
No.
Oh.
No. This past week.
Oh, it's out now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I watched The Guest, which is a horror movie, or a thriller. And
you've watched movies in Oculus Cinema, though, too.
Yeah, it felt... I like the cinema environment more.
You're just talking about the 3D environment.
Just the 3D environment. The Netflix one, and they do good jobs of dimming things, but it's like this it's mountain
couchy.
chateau.
Yeah.
And when you look around, you see posters for Netflix's other shows. Like there's a poster for Marco Polo and House of Cards. It felt a lot like... Okay, I guess the reason I like the cinema is even though the number of pixels you're seeing is the same, and the resolution is still 720, which is what Carmack recommended for that type of streaming content, because you're still splitting it down. The environment does a lot for how you perceive the content.
Interesting.
The virtual environment.
Do you feel like you're losing you're losing pixels, right? I guess at 720 you're probably not.
That's what he said. Like in Carmack's talk, he talked about even though you're viewing these on 1440p displays, by cutting it down and doing stereoscopic, the max quality you're really going to want to upload and watch in current displays is 720. And my point is...
Wait, are you saying 720p?
720p.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I read a long blog post by Carmack where he discusses the making of the Netflix app, and I thought he said he used a standard def stream, and because the HD streams were prone to copy protection and issues like that.
Maybe on Netflix it is standard def, so it's actually streaming, but the talk he talked about in the optimal content, like if you were to encode a video and put it on your phone to watch in Oculus in the Cinema app, you wouldn't want to do it in 1080.
Right.
Because there's no point.
It's a waste.
Yeah, it's a waste. 720 is the most you would be able to enjoy.
Got it.
But my point is the virtual environment, whether it fools you into thinking you're sitting on a couch or in a big cinema, actually does a lot to change how you experience that content, regardless of whether or not it's like the exact same number of pixels on the display. Twitch is the big thing. And Carmack made a really good point about, there were shared Netflix experiences before. Netflix experimented with that with Microsoft. And
we've done that.
Yeah,
we
it was
used
neat. The avatars. There was like the Mystery Science Theater style where you're sitting on the bottom of the screen. You can use gestures and tap keys.
Use the Connect to track your hands on the 360.
And Microsoft discontinued it because Netflix found that people didn't enjoy watching content that way.
I think it was more that nobody used it. It wasn't that they didn't enjoy it. It was just that no one ever tried it.
Those go hand in hand.
Yeah, they inferred that no one enjoyed it because it wasn't compelling enough. And the takeaway from that was twofold, I think. One, more said explicitly, was that dramatic content maybe doesn't work in this kind of active social experience. Think about when you're watching something like House of Cards, you kind of want everyone to be quiet in the room and just enjoy it. You do want the chat session afterward, but maybe not during the playback.
Well, I mean, traditionally you'd have that conversation during the advertisements that run in the middle of the show. But
True.
Since Netflix doesn't have advertisements, there's no opportunity to talk while you're going to get Cokes or popcorn or whatever.
And that's a fantastic point about something that maybe they're giving dramatic content too little credit with the Xbox social Netflix experience, because that wasn't VR. You're still the integrated sound and microphone was still through TV and controller. It wasn't as personal. It wasn't as social. VR overcomes a lot of that, but they're going all in with the sports analogy.
I was going to say on the other side of that, though, is that some things are much better in a shared experience. Like I'd much rather watch a horror movie with 5 people around me than by myself, because not because it's scary.
Hold the avatar,
right? But I mean, not
they
because
they know when you're turning away from the screen.
It's about the shared reaction. Like when one person screams and everybody kind of jumps, and it heightens the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Same thing for comedies, right? If you're going to watch something that's really spectacularly funny, you will think it's funnier in the theater than you will sitting at your home watching it on home video 6 months later,
or more obnoxious,
but one way or the other.
The point is that the social aspect has resonance. There's value to it.
Yeah.
But they're putting, at least in their new experimentation, it's with Twitch, because they feel like they're taking the social, the analog of
the chat room
of where people have the most social TV experiences, and then putting that in the virtual world. And they're saying sports. So instead of live sports, because there is no ESPN support, they're doing it with Twitch gaming support, which I don't think is a perfect analogy.
I mean, watching live sports together is fun. Like for a long time, I would go on Saturday mornings in the fall and get together with a bunch of my friends from college, and we would sit and watch football games when we moved to California.
Have you ever done that with a Twitch?
I don't watch esports, so I sometimes make Twitch streams. Very rarely do I watch Twitch streams.
I think most people who do watch Twitch streams, maybe they're engaged in chat, but they're not in the same room together watching on a big TV.
But like when you were really into watching StarCraft 2 streams, and you and some of your housemates would get together and watch on the couch, that's that same experience, and you could do it if you don't like. Sure. You live in a house with a bunch of other horrible nerds. Not horrible people, but they're you have an audience to share that stuff with that like Jeremy and I don't.
Right.
If I want to watch StarCraft 2 streams, my wife's gonna be like, well, go to the fucking bedroom. I don't want that on the big TV.
I think the point is that they still need to figure out not only where to integrate social, but how to integrate social.
Did you try it?
We did.
We did.
And so this is with Gear VR again. You're in the Oculus app, Cinema app. You launch Twitch. One person is the host, and then you join host channels.
And the host drives the channel that you're watching, basically.
So it's P2P. There are 5 seats. Mm-hmm. They are individually couch seats.
Including yours. So you and 4 friends.
Yes, you and 4 friends. You can swipe, if they're empty seats, swipe to teleport between seats.
Oh.
So it doesn't have that infinite seat theater experience that some people speculated.
Right.
Where you always have the best seat and things need to be relative to you.
But all the seats were good.
All the seats are relatively good.
Are they all next to each other, or are they in a square?
On this one, they were in like
a semicircle.
It was 5 Ames chair type swiveling chairs lined up next to each other in a semicircle.
Yep. So you can look at each other.
Yeah.
The avatar discussion process, these are prototype avatars, so they weren't necessarily the best.
They were far from the best.
Yeah, so they need to work out the avatars.
They were disembodied eyeballs and demons and flowers and
they
stuff
were floating
like that.
heads,
Yeah.
which I think Oculus really... Because remember that UT Austin talk where Carmack talked about, and this is, I think, before Touch came out, the value of social. And even though you can't do eye tracking, you can fake it with head stuff. This was you saw some of the implementation of that, where even though you couldn't actually look at someone, if you glance at them, they have keep alive animations with blinking and subtle eye movements to kind of connect you, which better than dead eyes. But still not as directly connecting.
But so do eyes lock when you look towards somebody, or no?
They didn't lock.
Okay.
They're still kind of like wavy, floating around.
Right.
No motion control, so it's just a head, and you had like visual icon when someone was talking, so you can not only directionally hear
And
where they're talking
that's being
from.
picked up by the gear?
buy the gear.
That was actually a little confusing because if two people were talking at once, you couldn't tell who was who. Yeah. All of this will be simplified when you can create your own avatar and you can make something that looks kind of like you, or at least choose something that represents you rather than like we had, I think, two people with the same avatars in the demo session that we used, and it got really confusing.
But if there's no positional tracking, you're all sort of parallel. How can you see through the guy beside you to the person next to them?
Arched.
Oh, they're arched. Okay.
Yeah, you kind of.
Oh, semicircle, like you said.
Semicircle,
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
And you could. There was a little bit of like what would be gyroscope tracking, or you use yaw and pitch.
I'm gonna start Twitch streaming some PowerPoint presentations, bypass GoToMeeting.
It's a great idea.
And use my Twitch stream channel to do virtual meetings.
There's nothing better than the great 7-second lag that a good Twitch stream gives you when you're doing a presentation.
So this only works if everyone's Twitch stream is exactly millisecond lined up.
I assume they're aligning of that in the software. That's a relatively simple problem to solve.
Otherwise, somebody's going to be screaming "hooray" when no one else has seen the goal yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's possible too. It'll be fun. Weird. I just realized that I forgot to turn on the YouTube stream, so we're going to have an audio-only version of the podcast on YouTube this week. Apologies, YouTube
oh my goodness,
listeners.
I like the YouTube stream.
I know.
I'm going to take off the pants.
I mean, I can start. I started the video, so it might just start at 43 minutes into the show.
Yeah,
we'll see. We're not going to go back and re-record the last 45 minutes. It's too good.
Good move.
And I've dumped everything in the long-term memory.
Yeah, it's all gone. All the stuff that you talked about is all forgotten.
What? Nexus? What?
Okay, so they announced a couple of small things. Well, this isn't really a small thing, but Minecraft is coming to the Rift at launch.
I think this is the biggest news of the event.
The Windows 10 version of Minecraft, not the Java version that everybody on PC is using.
Why do you think it's the biggest? And I know
because I think it's the killer app. I think people are going to want to play. People who already play. How many people play Minecraft? Like over 10 million.
It's a billion people play Minecraft.
So I think everybody wants to do that. There's
1 out of 7 people on the planet
there's
today
a large
are playing
enough
Minecraft.
Facebook, not Minecraft.
Oh, right.
There's a large enough percentage of those people that would love to see this in 3D, that have just lived in that space, that would love to actually go into that space, that it's going to sell units. This is going to be the game that they want to play.
Here's the problem.
Tell me.
The Minecraft audience, as I understand it, is 7 to 13-year-old kids, 14-year-olds maybe, and maybe a little bit above that. But the fat part of the curve is in that preteen era.
Palmer talked about playing it in college.
I played it. Norm and I played the shit out of it 4 years ago when it first came out. I like Minecraft. I am a fan, just to be clear. I can't see what that says.
Check your email.
Okay.
Related to this podcast. Anyway, I think Will's right about the audience, the alignment of audiences of who plays Minecraft now and who's going to adopt virtual reality early.
Yeah.
Even though I don't currently regularly play Minecraft, Minecraft being the first step toward the metaverse is extremely compelling.
It already is social. It's already creative. It's very accessible. It's got a wonderful aesthetic to it. I think it's perfect for VR.
Here's the problem: is that they say that you shouldn't use the headsets unless you're 13.
Is that what they say now?
So the fat part of the curve,
it was 8.
That might be the Gear VR headsets.
Okay.
Gear VR is 13 for sure.
No kidding.
I mean, 99%.
Okay.
The Rift headset, maybe they haven't said yet.
Yeah.
The common wisdom that I've seen on stereoscopic 3D, not fucking up your eye development, is somewhere between 6 and 13.
Okay.
Anywhere along that chunk, they're going to cut out a massive part of the Minecraft audience. So I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it falls down.
And how are they going to solve world scale locomotion?
I think that you're going to do teleports. I think teleports coming out of this conference. Okay, so the other good thing about this conference is that we got to spend a lot of time with CV1 in relatively unsupervised ways.
I don't think it'll be teleports.
You don't think it's teleports?
I think it'll be gamepad.
I think gamepad walking always makes you feel bad.
Guess what? CV1 is launching
with a gamepad. The Minecraft thing makes the Xbox One controller make a lot more sense too. That fills a hole for both companies.
I think you'll see both options. Right. People will use whatever they want.
I am. Are you an Apple product lover?
I do like Apple products, Will.
I know it's this week's. It's the ad for this week's Still Untitled, which I'm doing right now based on the email that Norm directed me to.
Still Untitled or this?
It's Still Untitled.
Podcast? Okay. Then not related to this podcast.
So we got to spend a lot of time with CV1. Let's talk about this because this is important. my big takeaways after previously, I think you had spent probably 5 minutes in a series of demos, and then I spent however long you spent talking to Nate in the headset. I'm amazed at how light that headset is. It is really, really good. It does not work very well with glasses on. And I was surprised by that because the Vive is actually quite good with the glasses on.
Interesting.
Like I can wear my big chunky black frames underneath the Vive, no problem. Whereas the CV1 was pretty uncomfortable.
Presses
with
your
the
glasses
on.
against your face.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is also because the way you wear the glasses more like a hat than like goggles. When you think of a hat and you try putting if you wear glasses, try putting a hat over your glasses. The brim sits above your glasses, and the brim, if you and the ridge of the CV1 is the not fabric, is the plastic part, the rigid plastic part, which itself looks like glasses. It hinges around the back of your ears, so that part actually has to sit over your glasses. And so if you have any type of thick glasses, then that's going to press your glasses against your face.
So on Friday morning, I went back and did basically all of the gamepad. I mean, all of the touch demos again. So the multiple setups they had to do demos were a bunch of stations to do touch demos for games like Bullet Train, Job Simulator, Surgeon Simulator, all of that kind of stuff. Then they also had a separate thing for Medium, which we'll talk about in a minute, and a separate room for gamepad demos with the Rift. I didn't do any of the gamepad demos with the Rift because it was all stuff we'd seen before, from what I could tell. But I spent a lot of time in the touch demo room just to kind of see how the touch controllers work, how they occlude, how quickly they pick up tracking when they lose it, what happens when you step out of the field of vision of the cameras and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, my two takeaways were, holy shit, that headset is really light and comfortable, and I feel like I could wear it for a really long time. And I have to get more contacts, because I can't wear it with my glasses underneath it, or I need to get some really, really tiny glasses to wear underneath it. Mm-hmm. The other thing that was noticeable is that there's actually a little bit of a gap around the nose that you can see out.
I love that gap, and I'll talk about that. Why?
So you can see the keyboard or whatever is in front of you.
I'll talk about that when we get to touch, though.
Okay.
So Rift without touch. I did get the chance to sit down. There's open play for putting on CV1 using gamepad games, and I played the hockey game. The first-person hockey game.
You didn't do that at E3, did you?
I did not.
That was my favorite thing at E3, I think.
I did not like that at all.
Are you the goalie?
You are the goalie.
It's
There's
awesome.
There's not enough game there.
Isn't that more of a touch game than?
And they had
it should be a touch game.
They had it in their trailer, in their game trailer, like 2 seconds of it with the touch hands in it. So in the future, it may be a touch thing. But there's just not enough game in there right now, because part of the game is goalie, and then you actually switch and you use your head to aim at the other goal to shoot a puck.
Here's the thing about that was interesting to me, is that it gave me an experience that I would never get in the real world. Like, it is absolutely not a game. Like in the traditional, here's your arc, you're developing a character or whatever over a period of time.
I think it just needs more to be a game, and there will be different sports in there, just football in addition to hockey.
I think with touch, though, it becomes what is it like to be an NHL goalie? Like, coming out of that, I think I said this before, I understood why a lot of the strategic stuff when you play hockey in video games happens, why you fire passes behind other players. And it's all because your goal as the offensive player is to make the goalie lose the puck in the rest of the players. And it's really easy to do. And it was a kind of a unique experience for me in VR.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fresh perspective. I think that I'm sure they've considered this, but they're probably going to integrate ways to make it actually feel even more visceral. Like, it didn't feel as thrilling. Like, if you were standing in a real goal and waiting for someone to shoot a puck at you, you're going to sweat. It's going to be nerve-wracking. Here, it was still very game mechanic-y. You're just like waiting for the pattern, and then and anticipating. Unique perspective. I also played Lucky's Tale.
How was that?
Lucky's Tale, and Lucky's Tale really brought up a problem I have with third-person.
I was going to say,
games.
did they show first-person stuff in the non-touch demos?
Let me see. No,
because at E3 it was all like cameras on rails, fixed kind of environmental cameras, or a third person over the shoulder perspective.
The hockey one was first person, but
that was the exception.
Air Mech, Lucky's Tale, Elite. Not Elite, I'm sorry, Eve, Valkyrie, and Hockey.
But that's a virtual cockpit, which is a little bit different.
Well, yeah, but that's still from the first person.
It is still first person. Okay.
So, Lucky's Tale, which is a third person.
Yep.
And when we first saw Lucky's Tale, it must have been like a year and a half ago now. It was kind of like the side scroller view, right? You see the island he's on, and he's walking across the side of the map, and you can peer into the world and look deeper. With the version they have now, the camera follows behind him, and it does pivot, and you can look around the world and turn around.
Oh, so it's not on a rail that tracks the progress through the level anymore?
Well, it tracks your progress.
So before it was as if it was on a track that ran above and outside of the level a little bit, so you could kind of see and zoom in.
Yes, and you can lean forward and see further into the map than where your character is.
But now it's latched to Lucky?
Well, it's latched to which part of the environment you're on, which section of the map you're on.
So it's same as it was before.
Yeah. What happens if you want to turn around and go back?
You have to spin your chair.
You have to spin your chair. This isn't Gear VR.
This seemed very much like you need a swiveling chair to play all of these VR games if you're going to sit down.
Wait. So if you back up, the camera does not swivel to go behind him?
Not until you move past that point where the camera then glides back.
So isn't that true of any 3D platformer like Mario 64?
Except in Mario 64, you have a right stick which you can pivot the camera around.
No, you don't have a right stick. You have the four yellow buttons.
Sure, whatever.
That's
But
true.
there are platform. I wanted the right stick option. I know it's not
That's
part of the
gonna be
mechanic,
bad.
and I know
Yeah.
that there's not. But I wanted even just the ability to not have to swivel the chair, and to slowly pivot one-to-one analog, pivot the camera around, in addition to moving around.
This is one of the problems that has to be solved, right? How do you recenter the camera without making people sick and without making something that's kludgy and bad? And I think a lot of this moment is that we're in the place that we were with Mario 64. Because if you look at Mario 64, the thing that was revolutionary was, hey, they figured out how to do a third-person camera that worked better than anything we'd seen before. It's not great by today's standards, especially since they only had the one analog stick, but it's pretty good and it worked well enough. And I think we're probably at these things are going to work well enough, but they're not going to be amazing stage right now. What else did you see, Norm?
Well, the other thing I was going to say is, when you think of a third-person game in VR, one way to think about it is that you are in that world. Like, you're a floating head in a god in that world, and a lot of the games are like that, where it's best taking advantage of
Air Mech.
if you can Air Mech and Nimbus Knights, if you can actually move around the space. If you're thinking about VR from a seated position, a seated VR experience, which a lot of these games will be initially because they're tethered and you have a controller, I would prefer to think of it as looking at a giant IMAX screen. And just having a much, much bigger
You
screen.
mean IMAX screen?
IMAX.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said IMAX.
No, IMAX.
Gotcha.
Where your canvas is much bigger, and you're rotationally looking around, but then you could also then move the camera.
Right.
And so the two different paradigms. One, it definitely takes more advantage of the positional tracking.
It's all about managing motion sickness, though. Whenever you go towards moving camera solutions, it's going to cause problems. Yeah. I've been surprised by the third-person experiences I've had with the DK2, just based on some demos that's on Steam. I originally just thought of VR as a first-person kind of experience, but sometimes if you're looking at a racetrack or something from the third person, it just feels like you have a racetrack in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's like having a big toy.
Right. So if you can see all of the environment in front of you, then that's great. Because then you can really peer around it, and it has that near field VR experience. When the environment is bigger than you, more expansive, and it requires that you spin around to engage with it, then you're being constrained if you're on the desktop.
Is that so? Maybe that's also a gameplay obstacle.
It is.
They have to avoid that kind of problem solving.
Yeah.
I mean, from where I sit, the things that give you the world scale are really interesting. They're experiences that couldn't exist. One of the things that they had in the touch demos was Flight Control, which is a VR version of the iOS game that was a launch title or near launch title, where you drag the lines from the airplanes to the runways and try not to smash them into each other in 2 dimensions. And when you add it, and when you make it a 3-dimensional game, it becomes both much more complex, but also much easier, because you have much more better ways to route planes around each other. They can literally fly over top of each other, and it's just fine.
So that's done using the touch control.
Done using the touch controllers.
And you can wrap routes around other routes.
You literally draw through. You're still limited by the turning radius of the planes and stuff like that. So like you can't do a hairpin turn on an airplane because they crash. But you can have one plane going over another and they'll cross each other at the same time and they don't explode.
Wild.
It's a really a lot of these demos just kind of called out how much has to be figured out to me. I did the Job Simulator, the new version of Job Simulator. I think we've all seen.
Right. So should we talk about touch now?
Let's talk about touch
stuff.
I was surprised. I was glad to see Job Simulator was being ported to the Oculus, because up until now I thought it was a Vive only game.
I don't think. Most of the third-party stuff, I think, is going to be on both platforms and probably released simultaneously or whenever hardware comes out. I don't think that there may be some exclusive content on the different platforms, but it seems like
cool.
The third-party stuff is going to be everywhere, assuming the platforms can handle it. So the Vive, the Job Simulator, they showed a different one. This was Cubicle Worker, which I think they maybe showed at PAX. Valve showed at PAX. I'm not sure, but it was a more interactive environment than the restaurant simulator, which we saw last spring at GDC.
Yeah, they showed the kitchen. There are going to be 5 jobs. And actually, just to tease content, we have an interview with Alex and Devin from Alchemy Labs, which will be on the site this week, about their process of developing cross-platform for Vive and Touch.
Cool.
So there will be 5 jobs. The first one was kitchen. The second one was the convenience store. And the third one, which was unveiled at Connect, was the office environment. The big insight from them developing cross-platform, and it really, we couldn't explicitly say, because we were at Oculus Connect, what do you think is better, Vive or Connect? Because that's what people always ask. And the one thing we did notice in all the Touch demos, Touch will include a second camera. It's all their optimal positioning is 2 in front of you.
Yeah.
And like Will was saying in Bullet Train, which we'll get to, he found occlusion problems when he spun around. If you're using that shotgun motion, which is not great for
Or just occlusion. When you have one hand in front of the other.
Yep.
The occlusion was a much bigger problem, it seems like there. It also seemed like the play area was a lot smaller than you have when you're using the lighthouses on Vives, although that's going to be up to your room. But
the play area is smaller on the Connect.
On the Touch.
Than on
because
Vive.
They had like 5 foot by 5 foot pieces of closed cell foam that you stood on. And basically when you went over the edge of one of those pieces of closed cell foam, you lost tracking, which actually wasn't as big a problem as I expected it to be.
Regardless of whether IR is better than laser and what type of sensors they're using and what their algorithms are, I think it's, from our experience so far, Oculus is going to be really great, or at least have parity with tracking performance when you're facing the cameras. And so a lot of the game developers who are doing cross-platform are going to doing in touch controllers or some type of controllers, positionally tracked controllers, are going to have gameplay experiences where you're mostly going to be facing the sensors.
I mean, it's the same as with console development. They're going to build for the least common denominator.
And it's great that across Morpheus or Sony PlayStation VR, Touch, and Vive, it just so happened that these controllers, even though ergonomically you hold them differently, they both unified have 2 buttons in the front. So there are these some
and a stick analog and a gripper and a trigger.
Having 2 controllers.
Yeah.
So that's unified, which makes development easier. Now, some interesting insight, and we do actually dive into this a lot more, I don't want to spoil it too much, is how someone like a game like Job Simulator actually will be different for your controller setup and your sensor setup and your room setup.
Oh, interesting.
And they've developed, the game will actually be different depending on how you set it up.
Wow. I didn't know that. When is that going up?
Friday, I believe.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
So I'll come back tomorrow.
Just not to spoil anything, but will there be an optimal setup?
Optimal is a tricky word. There'll be a setup that you'll probably get more moving out of, more space to move in, and it'll probably be the Vive.
The Job Simulator guys are also in a unique position because their game is basically a sandbox with objectives, right? So you have this play field with a bunch of things that you can try and a bunch of ways that you can interact things. They're taking advantage of the increased verb density when you use hand analogs instead of a instead of a controller. So, for example, in the job simulator, in the cubicle worker demo, you can throw paper airplanes at people in other cubes. You can take stuff off of your desk, put it on the copying machine, and because it's virtual, like you can copy more than just paper. You can copy staplers. You can copy your head. You can copy your hands. Whatever you want. So it makes sense that they can probably scale up and scale down their environment. I haven't heard this interview yet, so I'm interested to see what they have to say.
You threw paper airplanes?
I threw paper airplanes.
Was there any danger of throwing the controller?
It had the leash. They put a leash on you, just like the Wiimote.
Right.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about touch is that the kind of neutral hand position of the controllers, it took me maybe 10 minutes to maybe one lap through before I got really comfortable with the placement of my fingers and using the capacitive sensors on the thumbsticks and the triggers to position my hands, and then using the middle finger button to control collision on individual hands. After 20 minutes in the different touch demos on Friday morning, I wasn't having to think about that stuff at all. It became really second nature, which was really promising.
Yeah, a lot of touch demos that we tried. Bullet Train being one of them. I think we'll save the locomotion talk for the very end. About the controllers, like when we tried the Vive, one of the most amazing things, and even worked with the Sixth Sense controller, is that you could pick it up and where it was in space. Like they handed you the controller. We've talked about this a lot. The demo person handed you the Vive stick and you picked it up, grabbed it from them, and that was like immediate response, very visceral. With touch, they didn't actually let you do that because they had to wrap the wristband around your hand. And because you had to have the wristband, which isn't tracked, you wait for that, and then it's like kind of flying in air, and then you grab it. And it's more difficult to grab because it's not a stick. So touch really seems to be designed for a very comfortable, neutral, ergonomic pose. Like if you just hold your hand out, and loosen your hand, that is the pose in which you hold touch. Whereas even though it's not difficult and not uncomfortable to hold a baton, which the PlayStation Move and the Vive technically are, the baton actually gives you more of a feeling of holding a tool.
It feels like you're holding a sword or a shovel or something like that.
And so while the games in touch maybe are better for simulating hand movements and hand gestures, which they clearly are with Toy Box and even things like Job Simulator and gripping pistols, holding a baton has many advantages and a stick type tool in terms of when the object in the game, when your verb in the game is to hold a tool.
Right.
And so that leads us to, I think, tilt brush and medium.
Well, let's talk about Bullet Train first.
Okay, so I want to save locomotion for the end.
Okay. Well, then, we can talk about Tilt Brush and Medium. So Tilt Brush is a tool developed by some ex-Double Fine programmers who are now at Google. It's a 3D painting application. Norm, we've all used it, I think, at this point. The interesting thing about it is instead of drawing on a 2D canvas, you can make marks in 3-dimensional space, and gravity doesn't affect them. So you can draw 2-dimensional objects in a 3-dimensional way. And then the results are really interesting. If you haven't seen it in action, go to Vimeo and search for Glenn Keane Tilt Brush, and you'll see him draw a bunch of mid-90s Disney characters in this tool. It's very neat. Medium, Oculus announced at Connect last week, and it's a sculpting tool. It's the same kind of thing. You have a 3D space, but instead of taking a 2D metaphor and applying it to 3D space, they're taking a 3D medium and then applying software tools to it. So, for example, instead of adding material to your sculpture is much easier in software than it is in the real world. You don't have to kind of warm up the clay and then jam it into place and all that. You can just kind of hold up your hand and poop the clay out wherever you want it and then shape it using the same kind of tools you would use in a traditional sculpting in the real world. It was a fascinating tool.
Two big differences. One, the fundamental difference between painting and sculpting made medium, for me, much more compelling. While you can walk around a painting in Tilt Brush, and you've used Tilt Brush, Jeremy, and you can paint and you can use different brushes and have the size of the brushes, what you're essentially working with are sprites in a 3D space. Lines and sprites in a 3D space. Vectors in a 3D space, which are represented by sprites because they're flat. Sometimes
some of them are flat, some of them aren't. But yes.
So when you think about like that, in my mind, it's like the Duke Nukem 3D analogy. You're kind of 2.5D a little bit. Volumetric.
Well, that's not exactly fair because it is 3D.
It is 3D. Like you can actually look around and see the zero plane.
And the thing that I've seen is that people who are good at tilt brush use that flat nature of the pen the way a calligrapher uses the shaped nib on the end of a calligraphy pen. So you can make thin and thicker lines by also twisting the brush in space.
Yeah, but Norm, to your point, that changes based on your perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole thing, when you draw in tilt brush, you're drawing to look at something probably from one or two perspectives, not to appreciate it from all the way around.
Yes, absolutely. And you think of it like maybe like it's a long ribbon. You can widen the ribbon, you can bunch the ribbon up, but you're still making a ribbon drawing and then taking a step back and then looking at that piece. I
do like the animated brushes that they have in tilt brush, though. I mean, some of them have little sparkly effects.
Particle effects,
some
kind of,
look like rainbows. So there's a certain amount of kinetic activity to it.
And in my mind, that's why I think of it like the sprites, animated sprites.
Yeah, right.
Which then you can walk around and look at from different angles. But it's fundamentally your flat objects layered in a 3D environment.
Yes.
When you're in medium, because the thing the quote unquote medium you're working with is volumetric by nature. Even though the tools are limited by just two fundamental primitives, a sphere and a cube in various sizes, it felt much, much more interactive. Because
it was easier to change things you've placed. That's the big difference. Like with tilt brush, you can basically delete things, but you can't really grab them and move them or make them thicker or add more to them.
You can do that in medium. You can move things
in medium because they're volumetric. And their objects, your tool, you can actually scale up and down and grab these objects and move them.
Oh, wow.
And connect them.
How are they grouped? How do you know what object you're grabbing and what is connected to?
Once it's touched and connected, then it's bonded as one object.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can also use your cursor basically and use that to just inflate a specific part of it. Right. Like there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do.
Wow.
So I think right now mostly limited by like MS Paint only has two types of brushes. Medium has only the sphere and the cube right now. But the fact that you can blow up a cube and make something very simple like a moon, right? Grab it, scale it, and hold it, and then airbrush around it. Made that felt much more real.
Well, so you can paint the sculpted item after you've done it. I made a really terrifying looking mustached face monster. You can. It's a really fascinating
I
tool.
assume you can also paint with colors, so you don't have to airbrush.
Oh yeah, you can use a brush type painting or airbrush type painting. They were, it was very clearly something that they're fairly early on. Like there were a lot of limitations. You couldn't make the size of the. If you wanted to make something that was very small with fine detail, the easiest way to do that probably was to make it huge, then select the entire thing and shrink it back down, because you couldn't make the brush smaller than say, the size of a
pea.
It was pretty big on mine.
Yeah. So, one, because volumetric versus, kind of large scale 2D, 2.5D, we'll call that, even though it's not really that. Allows for better near field stereoscopy. Yeah. Because then you can actually, even if you're not going to walk completely around it, you can move your head around it, move it up close, move the lighting, so you feel more like that is a real object, less than it is a 3D painting, blown up in world scale.
Right.
The other thing is the tool, the way you use the tool, which goes back to the ergonomic pose of the touch and the baton. And tilt brush, which we've only used on the Vive, is a baton base, and what they've done is they've the tip of the Vive controller, they've created a virtual pinpoint.
You have a drawing controller and you have a palette controller. To select things on the palette, you can swipe on the thumb pad to rotate the palette, and then you can aim the cursor essentially at objects on the palette, just like you would a paintbrush on a real palette.
So think of it as like you're holding a stick, and not necessarily a flashlight or a lightsaber, but like a spark. And there's like a pinpoint tip that then you can hold your hand, and it's not exactly the way you would hold a paintbrush or calligraphy brush or anything. And I've seen like just trying the tilt brush on Vive, I want to rearrange how I hold the Vive controller to make it feel more like a pencil.
You want to hold it upside down almost, so you can hold it between your finger and your thumb, like you would a fat pencil.
Because the touch controllers are not baton based and it's more natural hand motion based, it actually poked out from the side.
It seemed like it came, like if you made a circle with your thumb and forefinger, it seemed like it came out kind of diagonally over the knuckle of your thumb to me.
I felt like I was holding the pen like that.
Oh, see, it felt to me, let me see your pen for a sec. It felt to me like it was coming out almost like that. Oh. It was weird.
You're painting like a kindergartner anyway.
From my recollection,
The thing is, you adjust to it really quickly because your hand sees where the cursor is, and you don't even have to think about it after a couple of seconds.
Right.
Yeah, from my recollection, it was like there was an invisible pen. I'm holding my hand, natural motion, an invisible pen sticking out on my right hand, coming out, pointing toward the left, and maybe like an inch or two away from my hand as the pinpoint with like a green stick, and then that's where I could actually then pull things out and draw points and make divots in.
It was interesting. It was interesting how quickly you adjust to placing things in 3D. Like you kind of move your head from side to side, up and down, to make sure you have the thing exactly where you want it and in the orientation you want.
And that's near field VR. I mean, that's where stereoscopic is has the best effect when it's like that 1 or 2 feet away from your face.
Yeah.
Well, you can get close, step a little further back, but like walk around that in that little pad area.
Sorry. I was going to say the interesting thing to me about this is that I wanted to get further away from my thing than I could. Which was
push it away.
You could scale it.
You could scale it, but if you wanted to take 5 steps back and get the full thing,
right,
it was a little hard to do. So, like, is a really promising tool. Did they talk anything about exports and stuff out of that? Can you export like a mesh or whatever?
They didn't say.
Did they mention any kind of a share process so people will be able to see other people's work?
You can take images. You can just shoot snapshots just like you can.
No, I mean in VR. So other medium users will be able to view other people's drawings.
So the demo I had, somebody else was in there with me, kind of directing me, just like with Toybox.
Oh, so you can do multiple people sculpting one object?
We weren't both sculpting, but there was other guy was in there helping drive me through the.
You saw their head and the hand.
I saw their head and their hands.
I didn't have that at all.
That's
so
really
presumably
cool.
you could have worked 2 people on the same one. I don't know if they had that working on this demo.
But I'm talking more of an archive, like a gallery.
Yeah,
you can save the
you can save.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure Medium. It wouldn't be difficult for them to build that into.
Like, there's no reason to build the tool if you're not going to let people save it and export it as presumably stuff that's readable by other 3D modeling programs.
I think a lot of people's minds, a lot of people's heads are in games when it comes to VR, but I will not be surprised at all to see these 2 apps be kind of sleeper hits where people are spending a lot of their time. Because in the same way that the original Macintosh was the perfect tech demo for the mouse and GUI, this is the perfect demo for interactive medium like VR.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, because I think, judging by what we've seen so far in terms of games, I think we're going to see a lot of games that are relatively short experiences, right? So 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, maybe even just like 10 or 15 minute experiences like some of the tech demos we've seen so far. I think that what's going to happen is that these tools like Tilt Brush and Medium, the content creation tools, are going to be really compelling, and I think they'll give you lasting impact and things you can continue using your headset for while you wait for more games to come out. And like Tilt Brush, Medium, I haven't spent enough time with it to say for sure, but I feel like Medium is, because it's a 3D native tool that you can interact with in a 3D way, I find that much easier to do 3-dimensional work than, say, 123D Sculpt or something like that, where it's a 3D model mapped into a 2D space, and then you have to dick around with cameras and stuff like that.
You said it's affected the way you draw 3D objects.
Tilt Brush has affected the way I draw 3D objects. I'm much better at drawing 3D objects now.
That's cool.
On 2D space. Can we talk about Bullet Train?
Yeah. So Epic Games, which they did Couch Nights as a demo, and they did the other one.
Showdown. The Showdown? It's the street scene.
Yeah, they did the street scene, which was from last Oculus Connect, the first big standing VR experience, which was still on Rails. Then they also did the Tower Defense big lava one.
Oh, that was them too?
That was them too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So for Oculus Connect 2, they unveiled Bullet Train, which is another tech demo. It's not a real game, but they are at a phase where they will be considering making
Does Epic still make games?
Oh, yeah.
I thought they just sold engines.
No, Epic makes games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they have that. They have their TF2 kind of thing coming. They're free to play, and they released Unreal 3 Alpha, I guess, or Unreal 4 Alpha, whatever that was.
That's Cliffy B's separate company.
No, that's Boss Key.
Right.
There's another Unreal game called Fire Tower Fire.
Not Blizzard.
No, that's Blizzard's doing one too, as is Gearbox. There's a lot of these kind of games coming out.
Well, the point of Bullet Train is that it's a unabashed FPS. Like Unreal Engine 4, you are a guy with pistols, machine guns, shooting other people in armor.
Right on.
In some type of subway station, but at world scale. So the innovation here is
Fortnite is what I was trying to come up with.
Epic Games.
Epic Games is making Fortnite.
It's
Hey Joey, sorry. UPS is here.
Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, Joey.
So to move around that space though, you're teleporting, and you're teleporting to nodes. Teleportation isn't new in VR, but some companies, you can do it a couple different ways. Like teleportation obviously means, at one moment you're in one spot, another moment you're in the other spot in the world. How you choose that spot can be node based, can be completely open ended.
You place a circle on the ground and you pop there.
Right, portal, like basically portal.
Right,
aiming a portal gun, and even with both of those, how the transition effect works, whether it's instantaneous, a fade out, fade in, a zoom, scale out, scale in, and what state you're in when you exit teleport. Are you facing the same direction, or are you oriented in a new way? All these things can be experimented with.
Mm-hmm. This was a fabulous way to experiment with this stuff. I went and did this 3 times on Friday.
You liked it?
It was good.
Okay.
But I also wanted to figure out all the stuff that Norm was just talking about. Like, how do you transition
right.
if I warp from here to over where you're standing, when I warp, do I face back the way I was looking before? Do I face toward wherever the nearest enemy is?
Right.
Do I face the direction that my orientation when I started going into the portal? And it seems like they kept the orientation that went when you were going in. Most of the time.
Predetermined orientations.
Oh, on each portal.
Every portal has a predetermined, because you want to face the other portals.
So wait a minute.
But when you do that one on the top of the escalator, it always was facing away from the escalator where there were no more portals.
No, it was facing down the escalator for me.
So wait, you point towards predetermined portal nodes?
Yeah. So there's a button you press, and when you press the button, the nodes become visible, which are orbs.
We should explain more about the game first. It's a bullet time shooting game, basically a shooting gallery. You start on a train, as all good first-person shooters do. You exit the train. You find some guns. They teach you how to use the guns. You actually hold the guns in your hand, which is important.
Yeah.
And you're using touch controllers. There's one of the buttons on the gamepad on the touch controller lets you slow down time, and when you slow down time, it highlights all the nodes that are nearby. And it seemed like you could warp a long distance with no kind of penalty. There wasn't any risk or reward at all in this. There's no way for you to die. It was basically just a way for you to get in and be a total John Woo style badass with 2 guns.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the game.
Right.
But because you were using the touch controllers to shoot, you literally would use the index fingers to pick up the items and interact with the world.
And have to hold on to them.
Which was no problem.
Which is something you don't normally think about when when you grab a gun in any normal shooter or any object. You walk up to it, it picks it up, or you press a button, it picks it up, but you don't have to think about the passive holding on to them.
You might have to switch to it, right?
So this one you're actually... doesn't magnetize when you put your hand out and you see the object. Mm-hmm. Actually have to squeeze for it to grip.
There was a little bit of magnetizing. You could kind of just put your hand in the general vicinity and grab it.
Squeeze to grip, and then you have to hold on to that. And then there were both 2-handed weapons and dual pistols.
Also, some of the 2-handed weapons were one-handed. I don't know if I realize this, but you could Linda Hamilton the shotguns. They had pump shotguns. You could Linda handle them. No, you could Linda Hamilton them by going chunk chunk.
Oh my goodness.
And they would reload, and then you could just the thing that's amazing about this is, okay, the shooting feels really good. The haptic kick on the controllers when you pull the trigger, it's not a massive amount of force, but it's enough that says, hey, I just shot something, right? I'm feeling the kick in the same way that like the trigger pulls on the Xbox One controller in Forza make you feel like you're sliding or lost traction or whatever. you can do things that work in John Woo movies, like stand in a circle and just have one arm out one way and one arm out the other way, and turn and take turns shooting between the two different guns as you circle around. You can do the two guns in the center, look down both sights, and just rain death upon your enemies. You can pick up 2 assault rifles and shoot 2 assault rifles at the same time. You can pick up a grenade, huck the grenade at somebody, then shoot the grenade in midair. It all works, and it's all really, really fun. It's the first shooter experience I think we've seen so far that didn't feel like a carnival shooting gallery and felt like a modern first-person shooter.
Made for VR.
Made for VR. Also, because you're using your hands, I did one lap through the game where I didn't pick up a gun at all. I mean, I picked up the gun in the demo in the tutorial because you have to, but you could just slow down time, grab bullets out of the air, and throw them back at people.
Right.
You could warp over behind people and just punch them, and they would die.
Do you have to throw the bullets back accurately?
Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty auto-aimy.
Okay.
Like it did a pretty good warp. You could beat someone to death with a gun. Like you could just grab the gun and then whack them over the head with it,
Right.
or huck it at them, and they would die. It was. I mean, all of the verbs were violent verbs, right?
Yeah.
But it was a completely new way to interact with first person shooters I've ever had before.
Did you think that they nailed the teleport mechanic?
I felt like the teleport. I never felt sick. One of the times when you did the touch demos, you got to play 2 games, and on Friday morning there was no lines. You could just go out and come back in, go out and come back in. And I did 2 rounds of bullet train in one loop. No problem.
It seems like teleporting solves 2 problems. It solves the motion sickness that you get from moving at all through the space, and it solves the how do you traverse a large amount of space.
Right. The environment that we were in was way bigger than your 15 by 15 foot Vive room. It was essentially a giant train station with multiple levels.
The virtual
and platforms.
environment.
The virtual environment.
Yeah.
And the teleportation was initially a little bit disorienting, but you kind of got a rhythm where you would warp and then you'd look around and see where the bad guys were around you. Or even better, if it was a stealthier game, you would warp to where they wouldn't be able to see you, find them, pick your next teleport, and zap over there.
I really didn't like the nodes.
You didn't like the nodes?
Didn't like the nodes.
You'd like to be able to go anywhere?
Even if it's like the nodes were a region, a sphere, like a circular region, and I can just pinpoint any spot in that region. Because
isn't that how the Monument Valley game works?
No, it has nodes too.
Oh, it has nodes too.
Yeah.
Huh.
But it plays the animation. So teleporting is absolutely better than playing an animation.
Playing the animation when you teleport was unpleasant.
So
walking with the gamepad was much worse than the teleport animation, though.
instant teleportation is, I think, the way to go. But giving people either more control about the direction they're facing, or
being
general
smarter
area.
about it.
Because if you're thinking about a first-person shooter, one of the London Underground demo we did with the Morpheus, where you're hiding behind the tables and looking for the ammo.
Yeah.
That was visceral. You felt like, because you were crouching, like it felt like playing paintball, where even though your brain fills in the danger. Part of the problem with Bullet Train also, like, you never were in any real danger, and they didn't design the map to have places where you to hide behind. But
there was a little bit of cover, but not really anything you'd use.
More like elevation and minor things here and there. But being able to teleport, maybe like if I can see like along that side of the room and there are trash cans or a box, I can teleport and point to which one and go behind that and then duck behind that object. That would feel much better, I think.
I mean, I feel like the goal of this was to make people feel like they're a superhero, right? You felt like Neo in the Matrix.
The shooting mechanic, totally great.
Yeah.
Shooting mechanic, great, and also called really attention to how poorly you aim if you're not looking down the sight of a gun or have no tracers.
Yeah, basically firing from the hip was almost useless, except for maybe with the shotgun, and even then still probably useless.
The twist your hand kill shot doesn't really work in
pretty good if you
VR.
hold 2 guns right in front of you and you're looking down the sights with both eyes. I got pretty good at that.
Really should have done is just had a camera on every one of those demo rooms and just capture video of what you were doing.
The man that was in the room when I did the Bullet Train and was John Wooing it with both hands said I looked really cool. That's all I care about. I would love to see that fully realized in a game. I think it's going to be a while before we see that level of detail and attention. It was exciting to see what a big AAA developer does with the hardware, though. What did you feel like there was screen door in this?
It was the same hardware, Fresnel lenses, no screen door. It's
You lose it almost. I lost it almost immediately.
the display technology is great. I mean, you've used Vive a little more, so I can't tell the comparison.
I went home. I drove home on Friday and put the Vive on as soon as I got home. So I had like a 6-hour window between trying the Vive and trying the Oculus, and was they. I mean, in terms of technology, they seem very similar.
Yeah, and ergonomics is the big thing. Like, I can't emphasize how comfortable CV1 is.
At least when you're not wearing glasses.
At least when you're not wearing glasses compared to wearing a ski goggle type.
And for what it's worth, I had some Vive, some CV1 fittings that felt really good with the glasses on. It was still a little bit cramped, especially on the temples, but I had some that were actually. So I think there's probably a way to get it to fit really well, and maybe have some small glasses on underneath. But I feel like the Vive with glasses experience is much better than CV1. At least.
I hope in the future, I don't know if anybody talked about this in their keynotes, but I would hope that you'll be able to buy lenses for your VR device that correct your vision.
Those will warp the field of view, though, some. So I don't know how much they'll be able to do that. I know on the Gear VR, there's a big fat knob on the top that I can rock all the way over, and I don't have to wear glasses under. And that's great. That's a wonderful experience.
Right. And then other IPD adjustment, of course, for
Was there
CV1.
IPD adjustment on CV1? Of
course.
Is there a knob someplace?
On the bottom, and it's because it's fabric.
Oh, right, it stretches.
So before we leave the VR minute, the reason I like the gap between the goggles and the real world so much is one of the things Oculus is doing with the Touch SDK is giving developers the option to use default hand models and animations. So Bullet Train used this, where the hands that you see yourself using in Bullet Train before you pick up the guns were the same hands that were in Toy Box, and not in Medium, because you had invisible hands in Medium.
Yeah, they're including these Oculus designs.
No, you had hands in Medium.
You did not have, not in my demo.
You had the stylus thing.
Just the stylus, just the
Yeah,
controllers.
the controller.
But the hands are part of the SDK.
The hands are part of the SDK.
Which is good. It's hard to model hands, it turns
Well,
out.
some developers, like for example, Alchemy Labs, are using their own. They're using fat hands.
Right.
And fat hands, both aesthetically, it's more comical.
They're like Mickey Mouse hands.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse hands, aesthetically more comical, and mechanically give you more forgiveness for picking up things. And then a game like
Surgeon Simulator.
that used Oculus hands.
So Surgeon Simulator did something really neat. It used Oculus-ish hands. I don't know if they were the actual Oculus hands, but ones that look very similar. And then when you collided with something that you wouldn't be able to move your hand through, like your skeletal hand fell out of the main hand. The main hand stayed where it was.
Wild.
And then when you lifted it back up, they synced back up. It was the first time I've seen that, and it actually was a really good effect.
Was there a haptic feedback?
You got a little bit of a bump.
I like it.
No, I expect you to die, which is
That's out for DK2.
a puzzle game where you try to
But they have
escape. But there's touch controls.
touch controls.
Yeah, it's
So
awesome.
the touch and the hand version of that use like these black gloved hands, but we're very one-to-one. So the one-to-one thing is why I love the hole in the goggles.
So you can look at your hands and your real hands at the same time?
If I can look at when I in Toy Box and in Bullet Train, looking through the hole and seeing half my hand, real hand, and half the virtual hand, perfectly aligned.
You like that? That's cool.
There's
So cool.
Psychedelic.
Yeah, because I'm moving it back and forth, like it's like transforming your hand.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that's really good about the virtual hands and real hands and the gap is that oftentimes you need to be able to look and make sure that the right window has focus, stuff like that. It's really easy to take this headset off, partly because the speakers are attached. Those speakers that hang off the sides sounded really good. They didn't completely block out the outside world, which is quite nice when you've completely blocked off your field of view, so you can tell if the dog comes into the room before you trip over and almost kill her or kick your kid in the face or whatever bad thing you're going to do. I like having the over-the-ear, the on-ear headphones rather than the big over-the-ear headphones that go over top of the ski goggles. It was good. The whole rigid frame for the headset makes it very comfortable.
Cool. Oculus Story stuff. You want to talk about that at all?
Oh, I saw Henry for the first time.
Yeah. I saw
good.
Henry. Henry was lovely, very Pixar-esque. I mean,
Not so much in terms of like visual acuity, but in terms of
and
like character, like the personality of the character.
Yeah.
Henry has a lot of personality.
great little story. The pace of the story was very much like a Pixar short.
Do you watch it from a fixed position?
You can stand up, so you are in his environment, and he acknowledges you.
You stood, right?
I stood and sat down.
So when you stood, did you sit down midway through?
And then I stood back up for when the balloons thing happened.
Okay, so when you were standing, were you like crashing into the ceiling of his little house?
No.
Did they scale you down? So they asked me if I wanted to stand or sit, and I said sit.
Did you start the whole thing with the black?
The whole thing I was sitting.
Wow. I started standing, and then I sat when you're in his house, and then I stood back up midway and then sat back down.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
It's lightly interactive, is what I would say. Like,
Right.
he tracks your eyes, he looks at you, he breaks the fourth wall fairly regularly, and then like some of the environmental objects seem to kind of avoid you.
one of the lessons from Oculus Story Studio, from Lost to Henry, is that they realize, and there's a great future storytelling video, which is the same series that the Glenn Keane video came from. There is no fourth wall when they do these VR stories.
Yeah.
So even though the things happen and you can't affect the story, Henry has to, in their testing, the character has to acknowledge you or can't ignore you completely. And so it's not like he's always looking at you, but there are a handful of moments, maybe 3 or 4 moments, where he does look up and give you a little nod, which doesn't change the story, and the story works without it, and you completely believe, and you can still watch the story without feeling like you're interfering. You're still a passive observer, but it doesn't distance you from the story. So it's one of those little lessons. It's a beautifully animated, and they definitely ramped up the amount of resources they put into the teams. My fear is that, it's very resource intensive. It is as much the effort as, when you look at the credits of a Pixar short and how many people worked on that, animators, artists.
It was a lot of people.
Same almost number of people worked on Henry, for something that I don't know, like, how are they going to sell this?
I think my feeling is Story Studio is a first-party exclusive that's a selling point for them versus the Morpheus or the PlayStation VR and the Vive.
Well, I mean,
right?
I'm
that's
saying
it's marketing.
In general, like, if people are going to do scripted animated stories using Unreal or Unity, what are you going to pay $10 to watch this, or what's like? They can't just be marketing ventures.
Well, I mean, the ones that Oculus creates can.
Right.
The ones that other people create, probably less so.
How long is the experience?
10 minutes, maybe?
10 minutes.
Wow. That's longer than Lost.
Yeah.
Well, Lost is also
this is-
scalable.
This is a subset, too. Is the feeling I got.
What do you mean?
Like, I felt like this was a short that existed in a universe where they were going to tell a larger story.
I guess they could do that. Yeah. And share assets that way. I guess a serialized story could be one way, like a reoccurring television show. It's VR machinima, very compelling.
They released a trailer that anybody can download, but have you guys watched
I
it?
haven't
There's
seen the
not much
trailer.
to it. It's just Henry on a black background
Can't imagine it's great.
making expressions.
Like, the beautiful thing about this is being in his house, right?
Yeah,
You feel like you're there.
I wanted to see an environment, but it's just him, unfortunately, in the logo. But they'd also released the assets to the trailer so that developers can download it and check out the
Yes.
which is nice.
and see how they did it. There's a lot of learning there, apparently. I want to talk about the overall tone of the event. Well, first off, if you haven't watched it yet, the Abrash talk about the technical challenges of VR that he did after the main keynote was, I think, the most useful hour I spent at the event.
I watched it. I quite liked it too.
He broke down the human sensorium and where we are with making it virtual, from touch and smell and taste all the way through to the stuff that we're pretty good at, like vision.
Perfectly signposted. Kind of like just. I think he's going to do it every year. He did it last year. This year was even better visuals.
The theme was this is early days.
Yeah. So
These are the good old days.
The good old days.
I thought that was right on tone. Like that felt like where a developer conference for a piece of hardware that doesn't exist yet should be. The rest of it felt a little bit too, hey guys, we've changed the world, when they have yet to ship one non-dev kit headset, right? I like it. They were preaching to the choir, clearly, with the developers. The people there, myself included, clearly are true believers, right? But it felt a little bit like, hey, it felt like next year's Connect should be. If they sell 1, 2, 3, 4 million headsets next year, come out and have a big rah keynote. This year should be, look, here's how far we've come. It's been a long road.
And more lessons. Like I think the number of sessions, there could have been easily 2 or 3 times number of sessions for the minutia of lessons learned. Like when Carmack critiques Gear VR games, like each one of those critiques could be blown out to a full half-hour session, and all we got were some lessons learned from some developer talks. It's the developer community, even at 1,500 people interested, isn't the App Store community.
Well, and presumably way more watching at home. But all of the developers I talked to were really nervous about like how many headsets are they going to sell. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of stuff on Gear VR, is because they feel like that's a hedge, right? A $99 investment for all the audience who've bought a Samsung phone this year is a much easier sell than, hey, you have to have $1,000 or $1,200 PC and then buy an expensive headset and maybe touch controllers on top of that. So it's going to be an interesting fall and spring to see how this all breaks down.
Yeah.
I came out of it. The other thing that I found is, I don't know if you talked to some of the smaller developers while you were there, Norm. There are a ton of people working on enhanced hand controls or enhanced haptics for hand controls.
Oh,
hardware developers, gloves, tracking for feet and shoulders and all the other things that you need to do full body capture. There's a lot of work going on out there and a lot of people doing really cool stuff. So
cool.
Should we talk about Valve at EGX? Showed the Vive stuff that they showed at PAX and E3 and some other places. But Chet Falasek had a really good quote out of this, which is the only thing I think I want to touch on here. He said, let's see. I'm getting the quote.
Okay.
This is from the Ars Technica report, which is based on, I think, a GamesInsider.biz or GI.biz story.
He says, be making you sick.
As consumers and people in the community hold developers to it, they shouldn't be making you sick. It's no longer the hardware's fault anymore. It's the developers making choices that are making you sick. Tell them that you do not want that. The easiest way to get somebody sick in virtual reality is by trying to tie conventional control methods to a VR environment. Pushing a thumbstick to walk forward while you're sitting in a chair, tapping a button and seeing a VR hand reach out for an object, being able to walk around and actually use your hands to interact with virtual objects makes VR exponentially better. A lot of that was a paraphrase, but the exponentially better is in quotes. Obviously it's a little self-serving because their product is shipping with hand controllers. They're saying, hey, don't build gamepad games for this. But I thought that was an interesting, and it maps with my experience both with the Rift and with the Vive. Yep. I don't think that people are going to feel motion sick with the positional tracking, the low latency headsets that only display images when they're correct, and
with one-to-one motion through the
one-to-one motion especially makes it really easy. Being able to see your hands gives you a point of reference that makes things easier. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's the end of the VR Minute, and we should probably take a brief moment and thank our sponsors. Hey, Norm.
Hey, Will.
What do you think about SoftLayer?
Well, I know that SoftLayer delivers cloud built for innovation.
Does that mean that they can provide dedicated real metal and virtual servers that can connect to each other over a single seamless platform scaled across the world?
They better. Well, your business, applications, and computational workloads are unique, so you deserve the cloud resources that meet your specific needs.
All of this stuff is available on demand. Virtual servers, real metal servers. You can connect them using the same open API, and they're all connected to a global private network, which allows you to scale your workloads up and down quickly and have ample space for your storage-intensive tasks.
That's right.
It's an IBM company.
SoftLayer is an IBM company, and a lot of IBM's cloud products and services also use it. So even if you may not have heard of it, you could already be using it in your business right now. And all of the listeners to this podcast have the opportunity to get $500 off of cloud infrastructure by going to softlayer.com/podcast.
You can order bare metal servers, dedicated servers, virtual servers, storage, networking, and security services from your choice of data centers around the world. There are 24 of them, and all of those servers and services are connected to SoftLayer's network of networks, which separates private, public, and management traffic so that traffic to and from your cloud infrastructure travels more efficiently. Visit softlayer.com/podcast to get started with your $500 off server storage, network, and security on a cloud built for innovation from SoftLayer. Offer valid for new customers only for up to $500 off the first order for the first billing cycle of servers and services with any of SoftLayer's data centers around the world. Only valid on monthly servers and services. For more information on this offer, please visit softlayer.com/podcast.
That's my favorite part.
And we're back. We've been talking about VR and Google for a long time. Should we talk about the iPhone? Stretch it out. Stretch it out. Work it out.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Hopefully you guys spread this out over like 3 or 4 drives and you're not in the car for 2 hours every day. They sold 13 million handsets last weekend.
So
that's up from 10 million the year before.
And 9 million the year before that. Or not 9 million.
But it's interesting to note they did this with China.
Yes.
On the iPhone 6, they didn't launch in China.
But the 5S did.
The 5S did. So they're doing China years day and date with the S models.
Interesting.
Well, it's not a decision that way. I think they had manufacturing problems last year, distribution problems.
I mean,
it was logistics.
Yeah.
But regardless, they sold a lot of them. I mean,
that's a lot of phones.
It's a lot of phones. It's more impressive that they were able to get them into the channel. And it just shows how strong that brand is.
I know that they ran out in a lot of places on Friday before lines were fulfilled, especially if you wanted pluses. Pluses seem to be selling anecdotally better than 6Ss.
Can we talk about the ridiculousness of
waiting in line?
Brose?
Hold on. Let's get to that in a minute.
Oh, boy.
The thing that I did find is that people who you could make an appointment at 8 o'clock the morning of to go pick up a phone and basically get whatever you wanted if you did that. So if you're still waiting to get a phone, get up at 8. You don't have to go to the store at 6 o'clock or anything crazy. Make the Apple Store appointment and go pick up your phone.
Right.
The SoCs are seemingly made by 2 companies this year, which is new. It's Samsung and TSMC. I think the Samsung one is physically a little bit smaller. It's unclear what the distribution of those is and if one is better than the other. People are always worried about that. And iFixit on their take-aparts found that there are some gaskets and seals that make the phone more water resistant than we have seen in the past. Nice. So somebody posted a video this weekend of a 6S, I think, submerged in water for an hour, pulled it out, turned it on, and it worked. That's new. iFixit took their take-apart models again apart and found that there is a rubber sealed gasket that's like 0.3 of a millimeter thick or something like that goes around the outside edge of the glass. And then also the connectors are sealed. The speaker has a finer mesh over it. The assumption is that maybe they were going for a water resistant phone this year and it didn't meet standards. So rather than retool the entire line, they just left all the stuff in and then never talked about it. I don't know, presumably we'll see more water resistant stuff in the future as nano coatings get more, hydrophobic nano coatings get more.
They had the experience
online.
of making the Apple Watch going into this too, which is their first real water resistant product.
It's a simpler thing. There's no ports and no external speakers really. There's one microphone port, right?
Yep.
Norm?
Yeah.
What's Brose?
So the iPhone now is in 4 colors. You have black, space gray, what is it, white?
Silver, white, I don't know. Black, white, gold, and pink.
And pink,
Yep.
Don't
rose gold.
call it pink, bro.
Apparently it was very popular, and some articles interviewing people waiting in line said that it's a very popular color among new buyers.
Is it because people want to get the new one?
I think it's because people want to get the new one, and that's really sad. That before, you remember a couple years ago, pink phones advertised only to women. The dumb phone for women.
I think this is a good. Yeah, I remember the phone with the makeup compact inside, right? Like it had a little mirror.
The simple
for
phone.
ladies.
And now
we mocked that.
And now
this is progress, Norm.
Tech aficionados calling it. Let's not call it rose gold. Let's call it rose gold.
That's terrible.
Oh,
no.
That's interesting.
Rose.
I thought about it. No. It's a nice color.
It's a fine color. It's never not been a fine color.
Yep. It's not like hot pink or anything.
It's not for me, but
subtle.
Yep. You know what? Even though I got the white one, I like the black one the most.
Because the screen?
Because the way the screen blends into the bezel.
It's good for watching movies.
Well, no, I'm just saying when
In
it's
general?
off. In general, the way when the screen is off, the way it looks like one solid piece from certain angles.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with any of the other phones. I'm going to save it for what we're testing, my impressions. But iPhone's out.
Couple of other things. Glowforge, the thing that we hinted at last week, and then the podcast was late because of some audio problems last week. So all of our hinting at timing was completely for naught. Glowforge is a laser cutter built by some really smart folks up in Seattle. They're coming in at a much lower price and with much more capability and easier to use software than we've ever seen in a laser cutter before. If you've used an Epilogue or a Trotec or any of the Chinese lasers that are more cheaper, frankly, you'll know what a holy living nightmare the software is. They run all of their stuff through the cloud. Although if you're paranoid, they're going to release a version of the source that'll run everything locally if you so desire.
So let's explain this in depth.
They're going to open source it.
Is it open source?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the ways that they can cut down the price of the laser cutter, and we'll also acknowledge, yes, we know they call it a 3D laser printer.
All right.
It's dumb.
That is their name for it. They can call it whatever they want. We'll informally call it a laser cutter. We acknowledge.
But our style, when we put a video up about a product, is to use the name of the product.
So people can Google it.
When we saw the MakerBot 3D printers, we called it the MakerBot Replicator 2 Desktop 3D Printer, which is their official name.
But
still
whatever.
dumb.
The Glowforge laser cutter, one of the ways they can get it down to $2,000 for the base model is by taking a lot of computation. So what type of computation is normally dedicated?
There's two things, right? The hardware inside has a lot of presumably has a lot of electronics that takes the vector, the motor movements that your computer hooked up to it, in the same way that a 3D printer needs to slice up a model and describe the actual physical movement of the print head, the amount of plastic that's spit out at any given moment, the speed at which the cooling fans move, all of that stuff. Laser cutters do the same thing, but only in 2 dimensions. So, you put your material in, you say, okay, this is cardboard, or this is wood, or this is fabric. I want to start at this point. Here's my pattern that it's going to draw. It's usually a series of back and forth XY movements, X-axis movements, just like on a 2D printer. And then the carriage moves a little bit each time. And but you need a dedicated computer hooked up to that device. What they've done is moved all of the internal electronics and hooked it up to Wi-Fi, and all of the stuff that normally would do the changing over of what the driver on the computer turns into. It feeds to the printer is done on Google's compute cloud.
Yep.
Now, there is a concern. We didn't get into this. It didn't even occur to me because I live in the future where I'm not paranoid about cloud services, which are really inexpensive to run, going away. But people are worried that you'll buy a $2,000 or $3,000 laser cutter, they'll go out of business, and all of a sudden it'll be useless. They're releasing the firmware open source so that you can fix that if that happens.
Yep.
The thing that they're doing that's new is the registration and depth. You have to, the laser focuses at a very specific plane. So you have to, when you put a new material in, you have to literally bring the bed of the printer up, focus the laser using, in Adam's case, a little metal thing that we dangle off of the print head.
You're
that's
talking
just calibrated.
Traditionally what you have to do.
In a traditional laser. Yeah. They put a couple of cameras in the device that does all of that stuff for you. So the registration of saying, okay, here's where my cut, the thing that I want to cut into an object is, and here's where the object actually is, happens with a camera. They take a picture of the bed, they de-warp the picture because it uses a crazy wide angle lens, and then you see a picture of the item that you've put in the print bed. And you can literally take an iPad or a computer or whatever you want, drag and drop the thing you want to cut, scale it to the size you want on the material, and then press cut, and it goes. Mm-hmm. That is, I have wasted more material using Adam's laser than anything else by misaligning that just a little bit. So you either drift off the edge, or you're not in the right place, or you're not using the material efficiently. So that's a huge deal in and of itself. They also do the depth sensing using another camera, and they do that over the entire course of the surface. So if you have something that has a little bit of a hump, like for example a MacBook lid, you can do edge to edge cutting instead of just cutting on the flat part of the beveled edge. Or if you want to etch, probably you're not going to cut your MacBook lid. if you're using something like leather where the surface may undulate a little bit, they can work around that and they'll measure that as well.
Isn't that smaller camera also used for alignment for larger cuts?
Yes, it's how they determine where the actual placement of the. Yes, that's my understanding.
Right. So with the Pro, there's a pass-through panel where you can push long, infinitely long.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the bed size is the other thing. So
yeah,
when you look at like the specifications of a laser, there are typically two specifications: the power of the laser and the bed size. And those things, as they go up, the printer gets bigger, or laser cutter gets bigger, and also more expensive. There are two models of the Glowforge. One is 40 watts and one is 45 watts. Mm-hmm. Both will cut 1/4-inch plywood, is what they say. And because of the optical alignment, you can actually just flip an object around. They will mirror the cut.
They tell you which direction to flip it, and they'll know what the size and shape of the object is, where the cuts are on the other side, and they can line up the back cuts with the front cuts.
Yep.
Oh, so that's how they cut through thicker
That's
material.
how they cut through 1/4-inch material.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you can't stack that infinitely.
Yeah.
Like you just get both sides.
1/4-inch
pop things out.
But like I've tried to cut 1/4-inch plywood on Adam's laser before. It is possible. It is very difficult.
Yeah.
Or it makes an incredible amount of smoke, which is to be avoided.
Well, I mean, 1/4-inch is the one side for this one. 1/2-inch is two sides.
Wait, you can do 1/2-inch? Really?
With the Glowforge, 1/2-inch. It's not 1/8-inch.
I think it's 2 1/8-inch cuts.
No, it's 2 1/4-inch.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
I've tried 1/4-inch cuts are a little bit scary. They're a little bit of a.
I mean, those
Adams.
those boards are a 1/4-inch cut.
But those are acrylic.
No, that's wood.
Those are 1/8-inch, aren't they?
Let's see.
I don't understand how
That's 1/8-inch, dude.
Okay.
How does the flip work? How does it know exactly where the other cuts are on the other side?
So it takes a picture.
yeah.
It knows the size of the object, and then it says, okay, open the lid, flip the right side of this over so it's on the left side now, so you have the orientation right, and then it says, okay, I know where the cuts I put on the last cut are
Based on the edge of the
on the edge of the material,
and it's sub-millimeter accurate to that degree.
Well, it's a laser.
Well, the
Frickin'
camera.
lasers.
No, not the laser. I'm worried about.
The camera's very accurate. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. I didn't actually see that happening.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
So
Anyway, it's a neat laser. They're coming in at a price.
1/4-inch on one side.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah. 1/4-inch ply. Anyway.
They're coming in at a price that is very low.
Right. So the bed is other things. So it's the power of the laser. The bed, which is also a differentiating factor between the base and the Pro model, 12 by 20 is their base
Inches.
inches.
Yep.
And then
But it's not mobile. So on most traditional lasers, the bed goes up and down so you can do thicker items.
Right.
They don't do that here. So you're limited to like the thickness of a MacBook is probably the thickest thing you're going to be able to cut in there, which is fine.
yeah, an inch tall.
You can take the bed out.
You can take the bed out, yes.
To get a thicker material.
And that's a really good point because sometimes even though you don't want to, you can only cut 1/4-inch. You want to cut it in an object that's
Like if you want to
big.
put a chest of drawers into Adam's Trotec, it probably goes down enough that you could etch the top without having to take the top
Yeah.
off.
That's
a kind of limited use case is where they ended up with that.
But the Pro, two sides pop out, and then you can slide in and have 20-inch by
Whatever.
as long as you can feed it. I don't know how that process is going to work in terms of like, does it cut and then tell you to slide in and re-optically align?
That's it. It cuts. It says, hey, you need to move the piece. You move the piece. You tell it when you're ready to go again. It finds the edges and lines back up with them and keeps cutting.
It's a lot of machine vision.
It is a lot of
Yeah,
machine vision. That's why they're doing it in the cloud. Because if they
super
needed to put
impressive.
enough computer to do, like a traditional laser doesn't need that much compute inside, but because they're doing all the machine vision stuff, you need to have more compute power hooked up to it. The other interesting thing that I hadn't really thought about until after we recorded the last interview with Dan is that most lasers, if you're in a single use environment, it's no big deal because the computer that you hook it up to is going to be the computer you do your work on, whether that's in AutoCAD, Illustrator, CorelDRAW, whatever. If you're in a shared environment, usually in order to do the prints, the drivers for traditional lasers are locked to the machine. So like I can't install the driver on my laptop and then produce a print file that I can carry over to the machine. I have to carry my AutoCAD file, my CorelDRAW file, my Illustrator file, whatever, over to the machine and then run it through the print driver there. this is an important change because in a shared environment with this, you can produce the print file and you don't have to have a machine that sits with all those expensive software licenses on it. In the case of the Adobe stuff, it's $700 a year, and I think AutoCAD is way more expensive than that.
Right on, yeah.
So you can have, everybody can just print from their own machine, print it to the cloud thing, and it'll queue them up and you can take your turns.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
One thing you guys talked about vision already, but one thing you didn't mention was you can actually draw using a Sharpie.
I did that.
Onto a piece of acrylic or wood or whatever you want, and it will cut the outline of your drawing. And if there's anything that you've drawn within the outline, it will etch that area.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, that you could take this to a preschool and have people laser cutting.
Yeah. I mean, because there's nothing that is better for a bunch of preschool-age children than giving them access to something that can burn material. It's a super interesting product. I'm very excited about it.
I don't think enough can be said about the price. I've been watching laser cutters for a long time now. Game Frame was largely laser cut. I thought about buying a laser cutter. It would have been an over $10,000 investment for a used one. The cheap ones that come out of China are typically thousands of dollars already. But nothing at this point, though. $2,000 is a new level.
So the other thing that somebody rightly pointed out is that probably another reason that they're doing a lot of their software in the cloud is to make it more difficult for Chinese manufacturers to knock off their design, which is inevitably going to happen. There are... Right. I mean, I think it's an amazing product.
Well, what about the licensing of designs? I mean, one of the big fears with MakerBot was that, yes, people can upload the Thingiverse, but then they started charging for designs and being closed. With Glowforge, they have their database of designs of things.
Yeah.
Well, which they're paying to create. Yep. They're not stealing people's designs.
Yep. And then you can obviously import whatever stuff, but are they going to build a store? Is it like...
They have a store. You'll be able to sell your designs on their store.
They're also selling materials, so...
which use a QR code that's invisible to the human eye, but that the camera can see, so that when you drop their material onto the printer, here I'm calling it a printer, under the laser cutter, it will know all of the settings.
So part of the process with a traditional laser, or if you use your own material in the Glowforge, is that you have to kind of experiment with the strength of the laser, the amount of time that the pulses, the feed rate of the speed at which the head moves, all that kind of stuff, to get the optimal settings that will burn without warping or causing discoloration or whatever you want to avoid. And if you use the materials that they sell, that's part of their business model. They want to make it easy. They say they're gonna give competitive prices. I don't think they've announced any of the prices for that stuff yet. But their goal is to make stuff that you can use relatively easily. Yeah. That gets you going in the same way that using like a vinyl cutter like the Cricut or something like that. Right. You buy the material from them and it just works. So I mean, they have a bunch of different potential business models that will support the long-term use of the compute cloud. And I think their margins on the cutters are such that they're in pretty good shape for a long time.
It's worth pointing out that this is an introductory price. Right. It's $2,000, 50% off.
Yeah. So a big question when you look at the companies, new companies, is where are they going to make the money from, and where their costs are. If there's no subscription cost to use their software, you buy the hardware and you get all that stuff theoretically infinitely as long as you want to use it, then are they making enough money on the hardware or what their business model is? You would hope that, it's obviously going to be a combination of both, but you would hope that they can sustain themselves on a hardware business of selling printers and then maybe build out a content business, but not rely on the content business, because if you just rely on a content business, that's going to hurt the users at the end.
Well, so the thing that's happened that's worth mentioning right now is that the common wisdom on laser cutters is that it's a relatively small market. When you're looking at the pricing of like a Trotec or a high-end laser cutter, they sell for $8,000 to $25,000 depending on the size, and can go even bigger. There are some that you can put a 4x8 sheet of plywood into. The common wisdom is that is a market into which you sell a couple of 100,000 units a year. They're at I think $4 or $5 million already. I can't divide 4 million by 2,000 in my head, but I mean they're going to be when they start shipping these next year, they'll be a substantial part of the laser cutter market.
It's 2,000.
It's 2,000. Yeah. Okay, so
there are a lot of forums online and advice columns on how to make money with a laser cutter. It's not going to be that hard to make $2,000 back in flax and cheap things that you can sell.
$50 a pop, you can engrave people's phones and MacBooks. I think it's a super, like I said, I met Dan last January. He said, hey, I have this laser cutter. And what he described sounded like magic. And I said, look, I want to come see this because like it's a cool sounding product, but I've seen a lot of cool sounding products. And we went and they showed us the machine. Like I drew a couple of circles on a piece of plexiglass. We put it in the cutter and it cut the circles out.
Magic.
And I was like, this is an unbelievable thing. Let's keep us posted as you continue building it.
They have the filter underneath too. So if you don't want to drill a hole in your wall and have
open a window,
have an exhaust, you can filter it through in the little table that it sits under.
Yeah.
Do you have to replace that? How often, I wonder?
Yeah, so
it's unclear.
They didn't say.
They said it would last for a very long time and probably you'd be able to wash it out.
Oh.
I believe he said you'd be able to wash it out. We should.
Okay.
You should check that.
So here's a disclosure. 2 of the 3 people sitting here have pre-ordered one themselves.
I would have pre-ordered one, but my cash flow situation's a little bit iffy for the next 2 months.
But the point is that we are personally invested, not in the company, but in like this, in the technology.
Well, you've both wanted laser cutters for a long time.
Long time.
So Jeremy has pre-ordered one. I've pre-ordered one. Both realizing that, this price is compelling. There's a lot of promises. It's not the same. And I know a lot of tested listeners and readers have pre-ordered one. If you just look at the comment thread, there are a ton of people sharing their referral codes. We have not tested this unit yet.
I have tested a prototype in a very controlled circumstance.
Yeah, we have not actually reviewed it yet. So we're not saying you should go out and buy one. What we will do is that we're going to do follow-up conversations with Dan and answer questions about, and ask questions, hopefully have them answered about the cutter, both as people who've pre-ordered them and also for you guys. So if you have questions about this, if you don't know if you want to buy it or if you're already pre-ordered and you have some questions, please let us know and we will get them over to Dan and get them answered for you guys.
From where I sit, the price and the promise are so out of line with the traditional laser cutter market that it's worth the gamble. Right. It's worth the gamble that this $2,000 thing will do what they say it does.
$2,000 is a big gamble.
It's a big gamble. Yes. But compared to the opportunity cost for getting a traditional laser or getting a bad Chinese laser, it's a like, I feel okay. And Dan has a pretty good record of building stuff that's awesome. That's the other side of it. He's built a kind of a super team up there in Seattle of people. The guy doing the cloud stuff is the guy who designed Boing Boing's back end years ago. They have a bunch of smart people working on it. So I'm confident that they're going to deliver something that works. You went to the Model X launch event last night.
Yeah.
This morning.
Oh, and also, if you want to use my referral code, you can use my referral code.
Is your referral code still live?
Of course, I haven't maxed it out yet.
How much will they let you max out?
$1,000. 10 referrals.
So you get it down to $1,000?
Well, I bought the expensive one.
Oh, man, I'm going to go buy one and start spamming my referral code.
I have not spammed my referral code, and it's not in links to any tested stories, and it will not be because that's shady. I did put it in the comments like everyone else. I think that's okay.
Jesus, Norm. But now you're using the podcast to blast it out.
That's why I whispered it.
Mine's on
gross.
Twitter.
It's why I whispered it.
I'll just buy one for $4,000 next year.
Yes, I went to the Tesla Model S event, or Model X event. Boy, what a shit show.
What, was it a mess?
So
was this like a press event?
No, it was their launch event. The first Tesla Model X's off the line, and the first 5 people who pre-ordered them, the founders group, VIN number 12345, got their cars.
Was this like when you go to the Apple store on launch day and they give you high fives as you run out of the store?
Elon got hugs.
Did people get to touch Elon?
I think Sergey got his cars.
No, Sergey was one of the first 5?
He had a stand-in.
He wasn't there, but Sergey was number 4, I believe. Elon's number 1. Anyway, regardless of like the inside baseball story of how poorly this event was run logistically, it started late.
They're new at this business.
No. I think they just had bad team. I will say the one inside baseball thing is that I'm glad I didn't go as press because press didn't get to ride in the Model X.
What?
They did not allow
the Verge
press.
had a.
Some people, I believe Wired has a review of the car up, and maybe the Verge does as well, got access, but our friends
In the press?
In the press from websites, maybe like Engadget.
Sorry, Robbie.
Didn't get to ride, and we're waiting there till like midnight, and PR was running them around. Would
It's
not
in
let them.
Fremont. That's a long ass drive home too,
drive. I got
especially
home
if you're in your chud gas powered car.
That's right. They brought out gas minivans out. A booing crowd
What were the gas minivans there for?
Well, that was the coolest part.
to demonstrate the doors.
Oh, how they open in the
how they
when you're
open.
parked at the grocery store?
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about all the crazy technologies they've put in this car. It's notable for basically two things. One, the door system.
Well, it's a tall Model S, right? That's where it starts.
They call it an SUV, but it's really a crossover.
Yeah, it's the same chassis as the Model S.
Not same drive, because two motors.
Well, the P58D has two motors.
Yeah, so it's a P85.
P90, whatever.
P85
yeah.
and P90 has just a two-motor system, redesigned chassis for a crossover design for more capacity, seven-seater.
You mean body. The chassis, the thing that the wheels and the motor connect to are the same.
The body's different. You need different aerodynamics for that, whatever. And it's been delayed for a while because things that they originally put into it, for example, the cameras for the side mirrors, originally, for aerodynamics sake, they didn't have big side mirrors. They had two little triangles, which were cameras, and
That's a terrible
it was
idea.
a display on the inside of your car.
I'm glad they didn't do
I'm
that.
so glad they didn't do that because
Mirrors are higher resolution.
and zero latency.
Yeah, and
Effectively zero
also
latency.
work when the sun's really bright.
Yeah. Well, with cameras as an option, I think it would be cool for night vision side mirrors, IR.
I still would because in your high beams are just going to blind people. Because the thing you see in the side rear view mirrors are headlights.
Yeah, it's true. So regardless, the design of the car is interesting. They're Falcon wing doors.
Only for the back, though.
Only for the back two seats.
Yeah.
And then it being
both back rows.
both back rows.
Yeah.
Wait, there's two sets of Falcon wing doors?
No, one set of Falcon wing doors, but there are two back rows. You access them. The
Like
seats
they
are
fold up, right?
No, the seats don't fold. The seats slide forward and back.
Oh, for the way back?
Yeah.
They slide back, so the back don't fold up. They just stay there. It's a dedicated third row.
So,
So you can't take the third row out and have cargo carrying?
I think they're just cargo carrying behind.
So
it
it's a
underneath.
fucking van. That's not a crossover and SUV. It's a van. Made $150,000 electric van.
Yeah, 132 for the Founders Signature Edition. 80,000, I think, is the estimated price for the consumer, the base edition, which has 257 mile range.
Does the base one only have one motor, like the base Teslas?
No, they both have two motors, but the faster one, the ludicrous speed one, has a much better rear motor.
And it seems like from reading the Verge thing in the Wired article, it accelerates. It's a van that accelerates like a Porsche 911 turbo.
0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds.
That's terrifying.
That's what I waited till
Did you do
1
it?
a.m. to ride in to get that twice.
You got it twice.
Did you get
they
to
go through
drive it?
No.
Oh.
They
No guests. You were a rider.
no one got to drive it. They had 5 cars doing circles, and 3 people in the car at a time for 2,000 people.
Were you in the back
Do
or
the
the front?
math. The back.
Wow. What did it feel like? Was it just
It felt like flying. It felt like Chewie punched it.
okay?
that's what it felt
Did
like.
the guy in the front say punch it, Chewie?
No,
Because that would be
I said,
rad.
is that a straightaway? Oh my god! Both.
Did your like cheeks flat back?
Immediate, like I could not say anything, and then lots of swearing in the car afterward.
Whoa!
Yeah. There'll be premium video of that. So you can
Cool.
check out .com.
Hey, I want to talk about these two minivans parked next to it because I thought that was amazing. So these two minivans drove on the stage, parked as close to this car as you possibly could. Well, very well rehearsed.
Yeah.
And one of the minivans would open its side door. You know how minivan doors
Yeah,
slide
they pop
back.
out and then slide back.
And they were so close you couldn't fit between the two cars with that door open. So the minivan door closed. Then the Falcon Wing doors opened up and you could walk straight into the car.
Through the minivan?
Between the two cars, you could walk in, you hop in the car, and the Falcon Wing doors were able to close in that narrow a gap. And then they would later reveal that there are sensors on either side of the car and above it to detect how far out the Falcon Wings can go and how far up they can go. So if you're parked in a garage that has a low ceiling, they won't knock the ceiling.
I wonder if you'll be able to climb out when you're in a garage with like. I've lived in San Francisco for a long time, and I had some garages that the ceiling. Like my Escape barely fit in.
Yeah.
So there are two factors, and the technical term is what is the arc calculation,
Yeah.
arc algorithm.
He was saying, unlike gull wing doors, these don't have one arc.
Yeah. So
Right.
The variable is how far the doors swing out and how high the doors go up.
Can they go out further than they are when they're in the door position, the closed door position?
Think of it this way: it's a trade-off. For low ceilings, you can either go out wider or you can go higher up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have low ceilings, it'll go out wider to open up. If you have high ceilings but narrow garage, it will go higher, or in that minivan situation, it will arc up higher and then fold in. You can't have low ceilings and narrow space. That won't work.
No, bad parking spot. Don't park there.
Yeah, the algorithm just won't work that way.
Okay, you're just trapped in the back if that's the case.
Yep. Other novel features: if you walk up to the car, the sensor will know you're approaching it from the driver's side, and the door will automatically open. And
Like
when you
it
walk
opens, or just unlocks?
opens,
and
they
closes.
Elon called it the invisible chauffeur.
Yeah, that's not the gull wing. Or
No,
whatever.
that's the driver's side.
Driver's
Yeah.
door.
When you put
opens,
your foot on the brake, the door closes, right?
and then when you sit inside, when it detects you sitting in, it'll close. The seats. This is a great. Like all cars should have this. Really nicely designed seats with completely open space underneath them.
So you can just put your laptop under there?
You could put a whole backpack underneath. You could put it's like an
Wow.
airplane seat, bigger than an airplane seat.
They were thin seats. It reminded me of the i3 seats.
It does, yeah. Because the i3 seats are really thin and light. They're carbon fiber.
And then could you put stuff underneath them also?
I don't. They might have been low enough that you couldn't
Yeah.
squeeze it under there.
Okay. So very spacious that way.
It's highly safe. It's even the basic model, whatever that's going to cost. It's got all these safety features like surround radar and
It has all the automatic driving stuff.
all the automatic driving stuff. So assisted
driving.
braking and lane control.
What? It's an interesting product.
It is. It's not for any of us here at $80,000 to start. What's way more interesting is when they announce the Model 3, which is their $35,000 stand.
Right, which is only going to come online when the Gigafactory is cranking.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the biohazard mode?
Yeah. So
the biohazard
they talk about
mode?
the air filters being the air filter in the Model X, 2 air filters, one massive one and a secondary one that is bigger than the standard air filter in most cars. So you have bacteria, viruses, even.
Is this for the interior? Like most air filters in most cars are for the air going into the engine.
No, this is for interior, for your breathing. So when air comes out from in, and also when you're recirculating, it'll go through the filter, and it's hundreds of times more effective than existing car air filters, to a point where there's a button in the digital display where you can click normal air filtration, high efficiency, or biohazard air filter.
Does that mean Coalinga?
Yes. If you drive back, maybe.
We need to test this.
Yeah, if you drive to LA and drive past Harris Ranch,
Yeah.
We have to hit the cow shit button.
yeah, biohazard. Elon framed it more as a evil genius. If there was a post-apocalyptic society.
Right. This is his bunker. Bunker on wheels. 300 miles. Yeah. It's good for. Did you get to sit in the front? Did you see one of the things that people mentioned is that the windshield comes so far back and hits the glass sunroof that you kind of don't see any kind of frame around the windshield?
It is the largest front windshield in a car ever. It goes up. The sunroof is there's no like panoramic roof thing, but the sun visor is like really narrow. It goes past the sun visor and arcs up into where a sunroof would be.
Sounds cool.
So it's one big curved piece of glass.
Wow.
We were driving at night at 1 a.m., so there was no sun to test that with. But it's a neat car.
Sunglasses seem important.
We will hopefully have access to a friend's vehicle to get a ride in it when he gets his.
When the time comes.
Yes.
Cool.
Very excited.
Let's see. I mentioned this earlier. We're going to blow through the rest of the stuff really quickly because we were really, really long today. TiVo rolled out the Bolt. There were a couple of early reviews. Mossberg over at The Verge had his. This is a low end, replaces their low end Romeo. It's a 4-tuner box. It includes straight up commercial skip feature, which is programmed by humans for programs that run between 4 and I think midnight on certain channels. And people literally say, okay, here's a commercial, here's a commercial, here's a commercial, here's a commercial. And when you hit the button, it just boom, goes straight from it to the other.
Post process?
Post process.
Okay, so for shows
it's only for DVR stuff.
For shows you've already recorded.
It's for stuff that you record and then watch later. It doesn't work on live TV. But when you get to a commercial, it prompts you and says, hey, do you want to skip this? And you can. it is. It also has a watch faster mode that basically does the same thing like podcast apps do, where it speeds up the playback and then pitches it back down so you don't sound like a chipmunk. Mossberg suggested that you probably wouldn't use that for things that are serious and have gravitas like dramas or even comedies, but maybe for like live sports events. If you want to watch some golf or tennis or something like that, you can do that. That works on anything, and it includes, he said, better integration with the third, the over the top streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, so that like on the TiVo that I have, which is now I think 2 generations old, launching those third party applications takes a fair amount of time. It gives you a seamless interface to them so that you can, like, if you want to watch, say, The Good Wife, which is on Amazon and TV still, and you have DVR versions, it prefers those. But if you want to watch something that you missed on the DVR, you can pick it up on Hulu. It was an interesting review, and it has a really unique industrial design. It's like a humped curve thing that looks unlike anything I've really seen before. So I'm interested in seeing more about that as a TiVo user. They've also dropped the price of the annual subscription. So now you pay $300 for the box, and it includes the first year. And then it's an annual $125 fee, which is closer to $10 a month, which I think is probably more palatable than the $15 a month they've been charging of late. Twitter is adding a service that will let you go beyond 140 characters.
What? Now, I heard they did that for direct messages.
They did that for direct messages. You can give somebody a wall of text. The read I took from the Recode story about this wasn't that they're going to expand tweets to be longer than 140 characters, but that they'll probably try some intermediate stuff and maybe even add a service that's similar to those clipping tools that you see that let you take a bit of text from an article and make a JPEG of it and embed it.
Oh, yeah.
They may do things like remove usernames from the character count. They may also remove hashtags from the character count and URLs potentially.
Can't do that.
I don't. That gives me a nightmare of like 300 people on a tweet. Those characters don't count, so like the tweet can't get too unwieldy. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe there's a mouse over to see the list.
Google discovered some TrueCrypt flaws. TrueCrypt is a Windows whole disk or file encryption tool. It's not really being actively developed anymore, but Google found some stuff that is problematic with it. So if you use TrueCrypt, you should go look that up. The Google Maps, one of the things they announced at the Google event yesterday is that there's a new version of Google Maps that includes a companion app for Apple Watch. I have tried it now. I tried it on the way in this morning, and it absolutely did not work. But the interesting thing about it is that when you load it up, it gives you the things that you've shortcutted. So home, work, and it's a direct shortcut to those places. And you can theoretically tap that and it'll give you nav directions. It doesn't show you a live updating map like the Apple Watch app for the watch does. But this seems a little bit more useful because I think most of the time I'm going either to home or to the office or maybe one or two other places. And it seems like if you pin them, then they'll stick there. So that's interesting. And last but not least, Nintendo has released the smaller version of the new 3DS in the US, and they did it with the Super Famicom style red, blue, green, yellow buttons.
Nice.
Which is super hot.
Is this the 3DS with the little nub?
This is the 3DS with the little nub.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that's it for news. I'm going to play some music and we'll talk about what we've been testing. Hey, Norm.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Will.
What have you guys been testing?
Well,
I know what I've been testing. It's my resolve to not go buy a new iPhone.
How's that going for you?
I haven't bought a new iPhone yet.
very good.
It's been a week almost.
It's been 6 days. At first, I didn't feel too bad about it. And then I came in here this morning and I saw that Norm's 6S Plus.
Scale's about a half second faster.
It doesn't do the hitch when you resize stuff. Or when you open new apps, or when you alt tab, whatever, double tap the home button. I don't think that's worth $400.
I don't think it's worth $400.
But you thought about it.
I had a moment.
Yeah. Last time this happened, you were at Maximum PC, and I started calling you last gen for about 2 weeks.
Wow. Was that 3GS?
And you cracked.
No, I never bought a 3G.
3GS.
The 3GS I bought at launch. It was you that Norm was last gen on the 3GS.
No, I called you last gen in the office constantly, and you took me aside and asked me to stop.
The only one I didn't get on launch, I think, was the 3G, and I never bought a 3G.
Well,
I didn't buy a iPhone 1 on launch.
Where's the 3GS?
not how I remember.
No, the 3GS I had delivered to the office. I remember. Robbie Baldwin and I picked him up from the mailroom at the same time on launch day.
Anyway,
Because it's the only phone that I would have had delivered while we were at Future. Because I bought the one at stores, the 3GS was mailed, and 4 was a tested joint.
I'm proud of you. This is a good move.
I feel like this is the responsible grown-up decision.
It is very prudent.
Now, if I happen to drop it,
4 was the first one they mailed to people.
we 4 was a tested phone though, right?
Gary remember Gary got the 4 early?
He got it mailed to us on Oktobercast.
That's right. We had to wait in line. We had to wait in line every year.
Yeah,
3GS.
3GS was mailed, dude. I'm reasonably sure.
All right.
Revisionist history.
Yeah.
Regardless, the iPhone 6s, as we talked about earlier, is out. Jeremy and I have both been using it from different perspectives. Jeremy as a long-time devoted iOS user.
Yep.
Me as someone who bailed on iOS after the iPhone 5, went 2.5, almost 3 years now on Android, and now back on the iPhone 6s Plus. There's still a lot more testing to be done. I know reviews are out and everything, but there's still lots of things to consider. Some immediate reactions. 3D Touch is fantastic.
What do you use it for? What do you find yourself using it for?
Home screen shortcuts.
Like
I'm not going to call it right click. Home screen shortcuts.
You long press the icon and it gives you options to do
Hard
new
press.
things.
And that's a very easy misconception because long press is
fast.
still is still rearrange. And someone made a good point. You know, if long press wasn't rearrange, like for example on Android, you just tap any empty space in the home screen and that's rearrange.
Yep.
If they could have made long press shortcuts in previous versions of iOS without needing 3D Touch. What 3D Touch does is combined with, I think it only is really the most effective with that Taptic engine. And the question we had last week with Taptic engine was, does it simulate the fake click on the MacBook touch trackpads? Yes, it does.
I have real feelings about this.
It does, not in a super precise, localized way, but it's enough to be much better than any vibration motor I've used on a phone.
Wow, it is. And it's interesting when you hit things that don't have the shortcut.
There are more things.
It kind of gives you a sad bump.
You just want everything to have it.
It says
Yeah, and more things have and there's no indicator. Like every day, every time an app updates, you click it. Oh, it doesn't have it yet. Why doesn't this have it? Not even all Apple apps have it. But the shortcuts could be better. They could be rearranged. I wish you could program the shortcuts, or at least the order of the shortcuts, or get rid of things, hide things you don't use. Peek and Pop, great for mail. I use that all the time in mail now because I don't need to mark a mail as unread or read. I can just peek into it.
Wow, this is delightful.
The Taptic feedback engine, not used in keyboard.
What, you can't turn the bumps on in the keyboard?
There's no bumps, and the iPhone has never had that.
Yeah, it's never had that.
It had the clicks, which felt the same.
It had audio.
You could feel the audio clicks though through the phone.
I guess. Android's always had the thing where, or at least recently, you can turn on the vibration motor,
and I like that.
And I like that. And I would think that because Taptic Engine gives you a simulated, localized feedback, haptic feedback, they would give you an option to enable that. So I think.
Well, while you're on keyboard, I think that their implementation of the touchpad is pretty awesome.
So hold on, does the touchpad work on this phone? Because it doesn't work on my phone.
So try it. Sorry, you have to do a force touch. So on the iPad, it's a 2-finger, and then it becomes a touchpad. But on this, you go to any keyboard and then do a force touch on the keyboard, and that becomes a 1-finger trackpad.
Which makes a lot of sense because long press was how you did, was how you cursored.
See, the keyboard disappears.
Oh. Wow, I couldn't do it with my index finger.
I actually just had it set to light sensitivity, so you should be the easiest.
That's pretty good because you can't do the trackpad on the 6.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole system.
Oh, yeah.
The whole system's falling apart. My resolve is crumbling.
Now, the camera stuff, I still think the LG G4 is a better camera in the comparison photos I took.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest physical improvement, though, in terms of components over the last iPhone. The camera on this is far superior.
It's 12 megapixels.
Yeah.
And there's a great comparison of you can find a ton online. We'll be doing those as well. A bummer from the perspective of an Android user. iOS, which I did not realize, does not do push for Gmail.
No, Inbox does push. But here's the thing. I think push for email is a mistake. Like
Well, it depends on how much volume you have.
Well, okay, yeah. Norm, you and I have massive email volume right now.
I've missed so many emails in the last 4 days because I rely on push to email to let me know.
To respond immediately.
Well, I get that. You just install Inbox.
Yeah, Inbox does push.
I will do Inbox. Does the Gmail app do it?
Here's the thing that Gmail and Inbox don't do that I wish they did, and you can kind of work around it with Inbox, is you can set up a group that people get added to automatically and give instant notifications for those people. Right. And then mostly no one else, but it still notifies you anything that ends up in your inbox, whether it's spam or real. I wish you could just turn off notifications for the inbox and leave it on for a specific subset of people,
whitelist,
like you can with the VIP list on mail.app.
For whatever reason, inbox for me, and I don't get the volume you do, but my inbox settings, the default settings, do a great job of that automatically.
If you didn't get a lot of email from people that are people you may not have conversed with before, Inbox is amazing. When you do, it kind of breaks down a little bit. But
Inbox is a Google product.
It's an Inbox by Google.
So Gmail theoretically should.
At some point.
I'm pretty sure Gmail had it.
I'm gonna switch over to Gmail, but then I don't know. I can't notifications if I can. I like that I can archive and delete email in the notifications.
The swiping.
Swipe. The top.
And there's no touch. There's no 3D touch yet in Inbox or Gmail.
No, I don't think any of the Google apps have 3D touch yet, actually. Anything else you want to share? I mean, we'll do an extended video in the next several weeks.
Those are, there's a post untested about some immediate feedback stuff, things I miss and things that are nice and things I've noticed now.
Are those hot takes?
What's a hot take?
I don't know. People keep calling things hot takes, and I feel like it might be derisive, but I'm not sure.
I don't think it's a hot take. I would not consider them hot takes.
It's noticeably heavier.
Hey, El Capitan
it's heavy.
Is out for us right now. And for you guys, it was yesterday. We should have put that in the news, but if you want to update your OS 10, you can right now. We were even at the start of the podcast.
That's right.
Can I feel weight?
Yes, you may. Let's do a blind because
here's the Duke.
Let's do the blind. Will's phone. The big differences are, well, mine's warmer. I shouldn't have said that.
Just put mine in your pants pocket for a minute, and you know.
Oh, it's noticeably heavier.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here you go.
This is some great radio.
Will's was a jiggling them in his hand.
I think this one is the plus. Is this S? No, I was wrong.
It is heavier.
It is a little bit heavier. Okay. I spent 6 hours yesterday setting up SmartThings 2.0 at my house.
What's that?
It is the second generation of the Samsung SmartThings Smart Home Hub. It lets you control Zigbee and Z-Wave devices, as well as things like Philips Hue, Harmony remotes, Sonos, and it'll connect to things like Amazon's Echo as well to automate lighting and other things in your house, like locks and garage doors and stuff like that.
So Echo can control more than lighting?
I can say, you can turn on the Sonos with the Echo through SmartThings.
Locks?
I assume you can do locks. I don't know about that. I don't have any locks in my house because I don't like smart locks. I'm a little paranoid about it.
Gmail does push.
Oh, there you go. Congratulations. So, in order to migrate from the version 1 hub to the version 2 hub, the version 2 hub adds things like the ability to keep running your apps in the background. You know, your programmed behaviors, like when you open the front door, the living room lights turn on. You can do that offline. So if your cable is intermittent, as mine is, that stuff will continue to work. And it has a battery backup. So if the power goes out, your battery powered sensors will continue to connect and presumably stay connected to the internet if you have your internet connection on a UPS as well. In order to migrate, there's no migration is the problem because Z-Wave and Zigbee don't have the capacity to say, okay, this is the old hub, this is the new hub. Switch them out. So you had to disconnect everything manually, which took like 2 hours. You had to go into the app and say, this is something that Samsung or SmartThings could have automated. The removal process, it could have said, okay, get rid of everything, desync it. And there were like 3 things that I had to manually do some stuff on, like press some buttons. Everything else, you could have just had it done automatically. And then you have to plug in the new hub, reconnect everything, which in the case of smart bulbs usually means following an on-off pattern that involves some really specific timing, like 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off, 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off, 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off.
Wow.
5 times, the light flashes, and then it will pair.
Whoa.
It's not particularly well documented in the app, although I do have to say they had good documentation on their site that tells you what the on-off procedure was for all the stuff they support.
What's their excuse for not making this easier?
The Zigbee and Z-Wave standards, because they use encryption that's established at the time you make the connection the first time, you can't transfer that encrypted signal to other devices. And there may have been ways that they could have cheated it, but then it would allow other people to hijack your stuff.
It's sort of like when you get a new iPhone, you have to redo the Touch ID.
Kind of, but a little more, like there's no reason Apple couldn't transfer those fingerprints. They just choose not to because people are paranoid about their fingerprints. This is the low-level protocols that the automated home stuff relies on.
Yeah.
Don't allow for any kind of a transfer between devices, even if you wanted to authorize that.
My impression, just FYI, was that was the case for Touch ID as well.
No.
No?
No, those are, it just makes hash files on the device. I mean, I think they're encrypted, but that's a choice on their part.
Okay.
Samsung doesn't control, SmartThings doesn't control the Z-Wave and Zigbee standards. So Apple controls the sensor and everything soup to nuts. They could do whatever the fuck they want. Samsung has to live within the Zigbee and Z-Wave ecosystems because that's what the bulbs and the switches and all that stuff work with.
I say you're wrong.
Huh?
I say you're wrong. The internet will say.
Okay.
I think that the Touch ID fingerprints are stored on a chip inside the phone that is inaccessible. You can't extract that out.
But Apple made the chip.
Yeah, sure.
So that's on their, like that's a conscious decision on their part is what I'm saying.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, once I got it up and working again, it was fine, but it was a really, really extended process, and I would not encourage anybody who has an existing hub that's doing things that they want to go through it because it was an enormous hassle.
Sounds bad.
Yeah.
Hold off.
We'll
do a conversation about
We
it.
will have a long video about it in a couple weeks. Do you want to talk about the iPad Mini 4 at all, Jeremy? I know you've been using it.
There's not much to say. I really look forward to seeing what 3D Touch is like on an iPad. I think that's going to be pretty fun.
Does it have the faster Touch ID sensor?
No.
Okay.
Only the phone has it. And by the way, you had predicted that it would be too fast for some cases, and it is. I sometimes just want to see my home screen or my lock screen notifications, and I miss them because it's like as soon as I press the button, I'm in.
Yep.
Well, so you press the
top.
press the side button,
you're right.
the one that nobody ever hits.
But out of habit, I hit the home button.
Yep.
That's what I've done for a long time.
It would be nice if there was a setting for that buried in general where you could, extend that for a second.
But they'll never do it.
No.
Copilot app. What is the Copilot app, Norm?
This is just launching today on the 1st, when you guys are listening to this on Thursday. It is the second really big DJI Phantom and Inspire Autopilot app. So Autopilot Phantom was the first one, and this one is another system that lets you do autonomous flight with mapping and drawing a path. But the way they do it is really interesting. It's you don't choose a point on the map by hitting the point. Your interface is Google Apple Maps, the 3D map, and what you see in the interface when you're panning and tilting is theoretically where you want the quadcopter to be. So,
that's interesting.
You pan, tilt, scale, zoom in, angle up and down, and you say, okay, I want a top-down view of my house. So I use a touchscreen interface and zoom to that, and then add a keyframe. Then I'll move out and I say, oh, maybe I want to fly upward. So you zoom out. And then that's the view I want from the quadcopter. Then you add another keyframe. And then you send the commands to the quadcopter, and then you can autonomously fly that and record video, take photos, or you can then while it's flying, take command of the camera and do your 2-axis movement on the Inspire 1-axis on the Phantom. Really neat. And it's available today, expensive, as these apps typically are, $40.
But I mean,
if you're spending $1,000 or $1,300 or $3,000 on a quadcopter, spending $40 or $50 on something that grants it a lot of functionality isn't bad.
And which quads does it work with?
Phantom 3 Advanced, Phantom 3 Professional, and the Inspire 1.
So not the Vision 2.
Not the Vision 2. Different SDK for that.
Bummer.
And not yet the Phantom 3 Standard.
Okay. I think that's going to do it for us this week, unless anybody else has anything they want to talk about testing.
Well, I think I'm the only one here who had to transfer an Apple Watch to their new phone, and that was a pain in the ass.
Did you have to back it up and then restore it?
No, I lost all of my fitness data.
Really?
It's just vanished. And I just followed the standard steps that Apple outlined when I got the new phone. That was kind of a pain in the butt.
Did you back up your old phone, encrypted backup on iTunes?
No, it was just standard unencrypted.
No, the watch automatically backs up to iCloud. Because when I cracked my phone screen and got the replacement, you just port it over. It just works.
My point is that when you back up the phone, which has all your health data, to iTunes, and you added encryption to that, which we typically do to save passwords, that is also the way to save your health data.
You have to do encrypted?
You have to do encrypted.
Encrypted saves. But the cloud backup should do that because you do have to put your password in to do that as well.
That was all lost. Next time I'll do encrypted.
And then I use the move to Android or move to iOS.
Yeah.
How was that?
Super simple. It only doesn't move apps. It moves contacts. It moves photos, videos, and
like mail settings,
mail accounts.
Will it port a Gmail to a mail.app Gmail account?
It put everything in mail.app.
And do you have two-factor on Google?
I do have two-factor on Google.
And it just worked?
Yeah, I need... you
have to put your password in.
I need to put my password in.
Okay.
And then it also, most importantly, moved all my Hangouts messages into iMessage.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So all my conversations are there.
Pictures too?
Pictures as well.
Wow.
And sorted them.
That's really cool.
So panoramas taken with Android phones are in the panorama folder on the iPhone.
Interesting. Okay. I guess that'll do it for us this week. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back next Thursday with another episode of This Is Only Test. There's still tickets for Tested the Show, which is happening on October 23rd.
October 23rd, 7 p.m. at the beautiful Castro Theater
in San Francisco. If people have asked, we're going to have video for all of the talks. At least everything that makes sense up on the site after the event. Joey, this year we're going to avoid the audio problems that ruined Jeremy's talk for online listeners last year. At least hopefully. And then we also have another event coming up the week after that on the 26th or 27th. 27th on Alcatraz. We're going to do 2 episodes of Still Untitled as part of a Nerd Night Spectacular that's happening on Alcatraz. There'll be a bunch of other cool stuff there as well. So if you're into either us or other cool stuff, you might want to check that out. Tickets are available for that as well. I think you can find links to both at testedtheshow.eventbrite.com. Thank you guys for coming by and podcasting. We will be back next week with another episode of This Is Only a Test. Today's outro comes to us from Minker17. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Bye.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested. The only downside of this thing that I've seen so far is that it seems like we're going to go through balls like nothing you've ever seen. Tested. Balls. Bye.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested. It just automatically ran. Okay. Well, I can't believe
3 hours.
I forgot to start the